Imagine the Possibilities is dedicated to empowering people to reach individual achievement across the spectrum of life. We believe in creating lasting relationships, empowering people for success, and cultivating joy. Our team of passionate people work each day to serve our communities in ways that create a lasting impact. We believe in creating opportunities for people with disabilities to achieve goals, build skills, and celebrate all that's possible. If you want to learn more about us or join our exceptional team, visit us at imagineia.org.
The Iowa Hawkeyes are 5-1. 5-1 with a 20-14 win over the Purdue Boilermakers. And once again, I feel like we're missing something. Anybody know what we're missing here? Like the screen is bare. Something's calling out to me that we have to fix something. See if we can get that fixed. There it is. 21.8 points per game is the new average, folks. That is the new average. So we'll continue to follow the Brian Ferentz points per game tracker. We have lots to get to as it relates to the offense, to quarterback play. But more importantly, most importantly, once again, Iowa finds a way to win a game in which the offense is pretty, minus the run offense, and that, we want to give Caleb Johnson his due. That offensive line blocked a lot better than it has. But quarterback play, wide receiver play really struggled again. Eric All was a man, came up with a couple of big plays, had the touchdown catch. But all in all, a lot to get to. And we're going to talk to Coach Don Patterson here in a bit. He's en route back to his home base. We'll also have Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com on the show. He's going to be talking with us following availability with Kirk Ferentz. So as always, an action-packed post-game show here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Be sure to leave your questions and comments in the chat. And I think I explained this during the week to some of my viewers. Given the large volume of viewers, and I appreciate everybody who's been a part of this show for quite some time. If you're new to the show, appreciate you being here as well. We're going to have to shorten calls up, so we're going to keep calls to 2 minutes. Now, that 2-minute period, that limit, does not include if myself or Coach Patterson are responding, but most radio shows are going to cut you off within, first 20 seconds after your first comment or question. I don't want to do that to people because I love the interaction, but these last 2 shows have been close to 4 hours, folks. We just can't continue to do this. I enjoy talking to everybody. I know Coach loves talking to Hawkeye fans across the country, across the globe, but we're going to try to keep calls somewhat condensed this evening, and keep this to, let's just say, under 3 hours. But again, we're going to try to keep a 2-minute limit on phone calls. So please do not take it personally if I have to cut you off, because we got to keep things consistent. Again, the final score out of Iowa City, 20-14, the Hawkeyes over the Boilers. And we go, first of all, to our chat, and Scott has got a super chat here. Deacon Hill was obviously nervous in the first half, settled down after that. Good to see the victory. Yeah, we're going to talk about quarterback play, and this is an area where I absolutely love having a guy like Don Patterson here, because, of course, he coached quarterbacks for quite some time, was the OC at Iowa back in the 90s, understands the struggles of a quarterback coming in under the circumstances that Deacon Hill came in last week, and then, of course, his first start today. You look at Hill's stats, 6 of 21 for $110, 5.2 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. Not good, obviously. Not good numbers. Nobody's claiming they are. But I will say this, made a nice touchdown throw there at the end to Eric All, kept his composure. I know there were a lot of fans out there that were calling for Kirk to make a change, send Joe Labus into the game. I understand that. We've seen Joe, so we understand he can at least be capable in that situation. I mean, that's exactly what he did against Kentucky. He proved himself capable. The offense scored 7 points in that game. The defense took care of its job. But that's basically what happened in this game with a better rush offense. And I'm anxious to get Coach Patterson's opinion on the run game, because the numbers are really, really impressive. And I don't know the last time we've actually said that. Now, they ran the ball decently well. Iowa did last year against Northwestern, if you recall, going back to that game in Kinnick, about the same time of year, I believe, as well, maybe a little later in the year. But that was, of course, a bad offense last year and not a very good run game. But they did run the ball well against Purdue and Northwestern last year. This is a different Purdue defense. Let's remember that this is a totally different staff. You've got a new head coach who's actually a former DC himself, was the DC, of course, at Illinois last year, Ryan Walters. So this is a different defense. I would not think some of the same issues, and I didn't see the same issues. Last year, I was at that game in West Lafayette. I saw a lot of basic tackling issues for the Purdue defense on Caleb Johnson and the Iowa ball carriers. I didn't see that this evening. But again, we'll get Coach Patterson's perspective on the defense for Purdue, because I really don't think that necessarily was the issue. I do think Iowa's offensive line looked a lot better. And frankly, I didn't think pass protection was bad. Now, Purdue does not have a George Karlaftis to disrupt things like they have in the past. And so that's something to keep in mind. As far as total numbers for the game, Purdue ended up coming away with just 1 sack. Obviously, plenty of hurries, and I don't have those stats yet. We're still waiting for the official box score, official stat sheet from the University of Iowa. They should be releasing that here shortly. But just 1 sack given up on the day, 1 INT for Deacon Hill. The Iowa defense, really good again. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, the 14 points, had the late touchdown in the first half, late touchdown in the second half, gave Purdue a little bit of life. Boy, the second half felt a lot like the Iowa State game in Ames here a few weeks ago, because it was 20-7 in the fourth quarter of that game as well. Purdue's moving the ball down the field. Maybe not a great sense of urgency. I think maybe that's being a little bit unfair to Ryan Walters. I certainly think they were managing the clock better than Matt Campbell did. And to our caller on the hold, we're going to leave you on hold for a few minutes here as I kind of give my recap. But it felt a lot like that Iowa State game. And they give up the touchdown with 4 minutes to go. Iowa's in a position where you get a first down or two, game's over. They failed to do that. And we are where we are. All in all, though, the defense played really, really sound, and they got off the field last with a couple of big plays. Purdue did not move the ball 1 inch on that final drive. Did not move the chains 1 time on that final drive as they were down 6. Had a chance to go down the field and win the game. But, boy, so hard to do against this defense when it decides to buckle up. And, again, just 14 points given up. The Iowa offense, here are the final numbers, folks, and we're going to get these stats on the screen as we continue to go here. But final stats, Iowa outgained as far as first downs are concerned, 21-12. Of course, most of those first downs for Iowa were from the run game. 181 rushing yards for Iowa on 35 attempts, 5.2 yards per rush. Keep this in mind that that is also factoring in 2 Deacon Hill runs, which one of those was the sack, and Deacon Hill ended up going 2 carries for negative 25 yards. So you can't take it that away. Those are part of the rushing numbers if you're comparing the team rushing numbers to the rest of college football. That's how the NCAA tracks stats. They account for sacks as it relates to team rushing. I don't like that. I know Coach Patterson doesn't like that, but that's just the way they total this up. But if you take that away, the average goes up, and Iowa certainly was impressive. And of course, we don't expect Iowa fans should not expect Deacon Hill to ever gain positive yardage on the ground. That's just not who he is as a quarterback. So all in all, good. 17 carries for Caleb Johnson, who's back after the high ankle sprain, kept him out for a few weeks. 17 carries for $134, 7.9 yard per rush average, 67-yard burst that resulted in the touchdown in the first half. LaShawn Williams came in, played nicely, 13 carries for 74 yards, an average of 5.7 yards per burst. And how about this? 17 yards as the long. And why do I bring that up? Because that shows consistency. It wasn't like, I mean, obviously Caleb had the 67-yard run, but it was not like the numbers from Jazz Patterson against Iowa State, where the numbers are somewhat affected by one big play and a lot of nothing. And at times this evening, it did feel like feast or famine, but then you look at the box score, you look at the stat sheet, and Iowa was effective in the run game. Seth Anderson had 1 carry for 4 yards as well. I mentioned Eric All, 5 catches, 97 yards and a touchdown, long of 33. He has struggled with drops a bit these last couple of weeks, but he's also made some incredible plays, including a really difficult catch on another high and hot throw from Deacon Hill. Was that early in the third quarter? I don't have notes from that one. Really impressive play by Eric All. This is an incredible stat, folks. I mean, this is an incredible stat. Maybe not for a good reason. Eric All was the only non-running back to make a catch in this game for Iowa. And I say non-running back. The only other catch in the game was from Caleb Johnson. 1 catch for 13 yards. Not a single catch for an Iowa wide receiver. Not a single catch. Wow. And they win this game. That is an incredible stat. Is it sustainable? We've said that how many times? It is sustainable with this schedule. It is sustainable against this division. Can they go on the road and beat Wisconsin with that offense that we saw today? I have my doubts. I have my doubts on that. Now, I did have Wisconsin winning this game preseason, so I won't be shocked if Wisconsin wins. But I also thought Wisconsin might drop a game by now. They have not in the Big Ten. They've dropped that game to Wazoo. That doesn't affect them in the Big Ten race. So I am nervous about next week. I believe next week to be virtually a must-win. I know it's still early, but if they want any chance at winning the West, I think they got to win next week at Wisconsin. That is a tall task, to say the least. Lemansky, little man in the upper right corner. Keep that Cooper scoring. Perhaps he can score on an offensive package. We didn't see that today, but boy, Cooper DeJean was fabulous again. Almost had the pick 6. Iowa, ironically enough, the offense went backwards on that drive following the interception returned inside the 5-yard line for Cooper DeJean. Let me find the number here. I want to make sure I've got this correct. So, yeah, so Iowa had the interception. I'm trying to find where that was. That was in the first quarter. I'll have to find that here. I'm looking through the play-by-play. We'll get that here in a second. But, yeah, the interception that went inside the 5, Iowa went backwards on that drive and still managed to cash in on a field goal, and that's credit to a really good field goal kicker in Drew Stevens, who missed a couple today, but overall has just been fabulous since he got here. And, of course, really good unit as a whole. Special teams unit as a whole keeps this team going, along with the defense, week after week, month after month, year after year. Thank you for the super chat, Lemansky, and another one from Scott. Thank you, Scott. It says Cooper DeJean was great again, and let me take a moment to show off the Cooper DeJean apparel, folks. If you haven't checked this stuff out, be sure to do that. CD3lacesup.com. This is official merchandise of Cooper DeJean. This is not a knockoff, folks. Don't be a sponge and get a knockoff. I don't even know if they're out there. Let's hope they're not. Again, CD3lacesup.com. threads.com. Great stuff from RTI Threads, and they're not only partners with Cooper DeJean, but they're also partnering up with guys like Carson Shire, Carson got in the action a little bit on special teams, had a small kick return. I don't know if you noticed that. I believe it was the second half. But Carson Shire, Aiden Hall, Zach Lutmer, all part of the RTI Threads team. And you can check out their entire NIL roster at rtithreads.com. But this shirt right here, as it gets colder, this was the weekend. Had to pull this shirt out this weekend because, man, it felt chilly yesterday. It was a great day for football today, no question about it. And I was not there in Kinnick, but it looked beautiful. I wish I was there, honestly. And it was a fun game. Obviously not a ton of pass offense for Iowa, but great defense as always. Solid special teams, with the exception being a couple of missed kicks and a one poor punt from Torrey Taylor, and they get the job done 20-14. But again, check out cd3lacesup.com. You can find all of our sponsors' links in our description. I'm guessing this stuff is going to be a hot item the rest of the day. Man, Cooper's had a big couple of weeks, hadn't he? 2 picks last week. They had one pick last week, had the touchdown on the punt return, and then this week had a pick that almost resulted in a touchdown. He has been fabulous and is a future star at the next level. All right, folks, we're going to take your calls, and if you have a comment in the chat, I can't guarantee you I'll get to it. I'm going to try to get to as many chats as I can, and I've said this before. The way to guarantee your chat gets up on the screen is to throw it up as a super chat or super chat would be the way to get your chat up there, because when we get a super chat, StreamYard actually shows that super chat to me in the side, whereas I'm having to filter through hundreds, and I mean hundreds of comments. Appreciate all the live commenters, but there's just no way to do this. I don't have the staff for that. So if you want a chat or a comment or a question to definitely appear in the live chat, throw up a super chat, and we'll get to that ASAP. Let's get to our phone line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach John Patterson. Who's on the line?
This is Doug from Arizona.
Hey, Doug.
How you doing, Corey?
Doing good, Doug. Always feels good to be 5-1. If you had told me preseason that Iowa would be down Cade McNamara, Luke Lachey, and they would have missed their top 2 running backs for about half the season, I would have probably said Iowa was 4-2 at the best. So 5-1, I'll take it.
You bet. And I'm not real concerned about Deacon because I think this was just his first start jitters. But what I am worried about is this constant stall game at the end when we're only one score ahead and we go into stall mode. And I saw the next 3 years schedule, and that's not going to work with that schedule.
That's fair. I think overall, it's fair to say that it could work for 9 or 10 wins this year, because it's worked for 9 or 10 years and 9 or 10 wins a year in the past. And with this schedule, I think that's how Kirk approaches this, and I don't think that's changing. I agree with you. Now, I will say this: I felt pretty comfortable up 20-7. Did you?
Yeah, but not at 20-14.
Yeah, well, they did the same thing. They did the same thing they did against Iowa State, and the defense comes through. So
yeah,
I get what you're saying.
Beautiful defense.
It keeps you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, that schedule is just brutal. I mean, when I was looking at it, if we stay the way we are, I don't know, 5 wins will be pretty lucky.
Oh, I don't know that I'd go that doom and gloom. I was looking at and of course, you're talking about the future scheduling, and we've gotten schedules now through 2028, 2029, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Basically, every year, you're going to have 5. I don't know if I'd say marquee opponents, but really good opponents every year. 4 really good opponents every year. And when I say really good opponents, I'm talking the class of Wisconsin, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, USC, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. You're basically going to get 4 of those opponents every year, and on off years, you'll get 3, and on really tough years, you'll get 5. But you look down the schedule, you're right. It's going to be difficult to win. I've said that for a long time. It's going to be difficult to win this way, and at least win 8 to 9 games a year with that schedule. That's just it'll be interesting to see if Kirk sticks around, how his philosophy changes if it does.
That's what that was going to be my next question. Do you think if they do decide to let Brian go, that he's going to leave just because of the way the schedule is, and and maybe he doesn't want to tar his reputation?
That's a great question. I don't know what's going to happen if this number up here doesn't go up in the green, and I don't think it will. I just don't know where how they're going to recover enough to make 25 points per game. But I'll be interested. I'm going to be intrigued to see what the mindset is from Iowa and how they administratively handle that PR mess. Because if they somehow try to keep him on staff, I know that the contract does not stipulate that he's fired. I want to make that clear. That the contract is purely incentivized, and he will not return to his previous basically his previous salary, I believe it results basically in a loss of pay. Technically they could just restructure his contract, and the contract is, he's still employed by the University of Iowa. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I know a lot of Iowa fans have perceived this whole thing since the day that contract came out to mean that, hey, if he doesn't hit 25 points per game, he's done. And the reality of it is that's not what the contract says, but that is the overall notion out from the fan base and from college football. So you're right. If he doesn't hit 25 points per game, what's going to happen? I could see Brian walking away. I've made the comment that I think if Brian is pushed out by Iowa, I think Kirk will leave on his own accord. That's a lot. Now he'd be walking away from a lot of money, but my understanding of the situation is that's kind of been the feeling, is that if Brian is pushed out, Kirk is leaving. And I've kind of given where I stand on that. If Kirk wants to make that decision, that's his choice. But I don't think they're hitting the 25-point mark. I don't.
No, but they could very well be in the 9-10 win. And if they do that, then they're going to use that.
Correct.
Possibly to keep him, or maybe that'll help him find a job somewhere else.
Well, they likely will be within the 9 or 10 wins. I've been saying that since day one. I think they had a chance to go 10-2. Doug, they could lose next week. They could lose 30-4 next week against Wisconsin and still go 10-2. Heck, they lost 31-0 to Penn State a couple of weeks ago, and they won their last two. The schedule, Rutgers did not look good against Wisconsin today. I thought they've been better overall this year. Illinois is a disaster. Nebraska is a disaster. Northwestern is a disaster. They have no business losing to any of those teams. And how many teams did I just named? 4? That's 9 wins right there.
Yeah. One last thing. A lot of people are kind of down on our receivers, but I wonder, in practice, are they getting the kind of training, the kind of reps, everything that they need to succeed?
Well, that's a fair question. We've talked about wide receiver involvement at length, and I don't know how many drops the guys ended up with today. Last week, drops were an issue. They weren't as big of an issue this week, but they did crop up again. And it doesn't seem to really matter. People want to make the excuse that, well, DeJean throws too hard of a ball. I understand that to a point. He's got to take some steam off of it, and I get it. His first career start, I'm going to be a little bit more patient with DeJean than I would if it was Spencer Petras or even Cade McNamara. But the reality is, Don has said this, coaches have said this, if you get 2 hands on the ball, you got to catch the ball. And so that's on the receivers. But at the same time, Doug, the scheme and I think just how this offense is run, and certainly play calling, does not lend itself to a ton of wide receiver production. That's a problem. It's going to hurt recruiting. I don't think we saw Caleb Brown on the field today. I know I was texting Tom Caker to HawkeyeReport.com back and forth during the game. It sounds like, I'm guessing that will get brought up during the postgame presser with Kirk Ferentz, so I'll be anxious to hear from Tom on that. But no, you're right. It's just the only wide receiver involvement we really saw that ended up with production was a 4-yard run for Seth Anderson.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, if one person was dropping the ball, that might be on the player. But when every receiver is dropping the ball, that seems to be on the coach or the program that they're using to train them.
Thank you for some logic, sir, because I feel like I'm arguing against logic with people when I've had so many people make the comment, well, Brian can't make the receivers catch the ball. Okay. All right. So you have issues from A to Z over a number of years through multiple personnel over multiple positions, multiple execution issues in different forms. And we're just going to blame the individuals. I made the comment when Logan Jones snapped the ball over Deacon Hill's head. Well, hey, it's not George Barnett's fault. Everybody wants to fire George Barnett. That's Logan Jones. George Barnett can't snap the ball for Logan Jones. These college football players are reflective of their coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that's such a hard concept for people to understand. People can disagree with me if they want, but are the players not reflective of the coaches? Anyways, Doug, I got to let you go because I violated my own rule, but I really enjoyed this phone call, and feel free to call back in if you want when Coach Patterson comes in.
Thank you. I love watching you. Thank you,
sir. All right, that was a fun call. I love these interesting conversations, and that kind of, you could see, hit a nerve with me because I just couldn't disagree more with the notion that it's not just Brian's fault. No one's blaming Brian specifically for an individual drop, but when you see it collectively and you see a pattern of behavior, yeah, that's reflective of coaching. Whether you're talking about Kelton Copeland or Brian, or if it's a tight ends coach, it's Abdul Hodge. I mean, what if it's a running back dropping the ball? Then I'm going to give some blame to Liddell Betts. That's just what this is, and ultimately, the onus falls back offensively to the offensive coordinator, and that, last time I checked, was Brian Ferentz and the head coach, Kirk Ferentz. This is not hard, in my opinion, but it's hard for some people. Let's go back to our call line. James, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
Doing good, man.
I was going to bring up the Caleb Brown situation, but you already brought it up. But the first, I think, most important thing is D-line looked better than they have all year today, and I think that's the biggest thing. They got a lot of pressure to the quarterback, and I think that kind of threw him off.
Well, they've here's what I'll say. You're right. The defensive line, I think the game went on, they got better. Hudson Card had a lot of time in the first half.
Yeah, he did. But he also did make a lot of dumb mistakes as well. I feel like if you watch it, he made the mistakes himself most of the time. So I step up in the pocket too far, and there's somebody there when he had time instead. Or the rollouts, some of the rollouts too, he put himself in a bad spot and then just chucked it up after that.
Yeah, no, you're right. He made bad decisions, and the throws over his head and the backwards. I haven't seen a quarterback resort to those plays, but here's what I'm seeing, and I wasn't at the game, and I'll be anxious to get Coach P's perspective on this, but my guess is that means coverage was really good down the field for most of the game.
On the couple of them that they showed on Peacock, the broadcast, they showed a couple of them, and it was good coverage on a couple of them. And mostly that's what you hear most of the time too, even on broadcast too, is like usually if we get that much time, the coverage is good because it's the play.
Yeah, and that, what that tells me, and I could be totally wrong, and my football IQ is limited, obviously, compared to Coach Patterson. That tells me maybe Phil wants to start bringing more pressure. I could be wrong on that, but Iowa typically doesn't bring more than 4. Maybe start bringing a linebacker more often, because you don't want the opposing quarterback just sitting back there. But at the same time, your corners, your safeties are doing a pretty good job covering down the field. So maybe you can survive bringing an extra blitzer here and there. But again, I'll be anxious to get Coach Patterson's perspective on that as well. That's what kind of my thinking throughout the game.
And I felt like we played better on the offensive line as well. Good run game. Obviously, Deacon didn't look great, but I don't know how much stock he put into that. I mean, obviously, a lot of overthrows. He overthrew a lot. Obviously, some of them should have been caught. Seth should have been caught. I think Eric Hall had a drop too. But in that retrospect too, he was overthrowing a lot of people. So we'll see how it works next week for sure. But the one thing I wanted to get to is the wide receivers. We've never seen wide receivers. I mean, we have, but most of the time when they throw this, they throw the tight ends. That's how so many tight ends are in the NFL with Kittle, Fant, Hawkinson. Just like that. That's how so many in the NFL, because they use them over abundance. But I feel like eventually, I don't understand how teams can't stop it. I've watched it for 27 years. I just don't understand how teams can't stop it. If they know that's the guy you're going to, how can't teams stop it?
Well, you've heard. It was brought up during the broadcast today that. Brian Ferentz, I love when they bring this up too. The Kirk and Brian philosophy that we should be able to get up to the line of scrimmage, run the ball. We're running the ball, but we're going to run the ball anyways and be successful with that.
Yeah.
That has not traditionally worked at Iowa in the run game. It just hasn't. That's why Iowa's offense is typically not good. Now it's worked at Wisconsin at times. It's worked obviously with some teams across the country that have 4- and 5-star athletes. Alabama being one. Your blue bloods like an Ohio State or Penn State. But in general, it's hard to play football that way now. And you're right. What Iowa does with the tight ends is pretty unbelievable, especially given the fact that if I'm an opposing defense, boy, I mean, there are times when it feels like an Iowa quarterback, not just Deacon Hill, but any Iowa quarterback, doesn't even look the direction of the wideouts. There was a play, and Don talked about running back involvement in the passing game last week as well. He wants to see the back more involved. You had the LaShawn Williams miss, right? The throw to the end zone by Deacon, and it was into double coverage. LaShawn Williams is wide open on the right side of the field. And, those are the ones you look at on tape, but they got to be corrected during the game. So
what was your thoughts on Deacon?
I thought he was bad.
That's what I thought you said. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on him because
really bad.
He just overthrew a lot and overshot. And to be honest with you, on the Eric All one too, I thought it was going to be overthrown too. And then I saw him kind of like let up, and I was like, okay, I think he has this one. But
I thought he was really bad, James. He was 6 of 21 for $110, 1 touchdown, 1 INT, a 5.2 yard per attempt average. I did just get the official box score from Iowa. Let me pull this up here. But with that being said, as I pull up the box score, I want to make clear I am not giving up on Deacon Hill after one game.
Yeah,
all right?
no, I'm not saying that either. I was just asking how you felt like he was.
We can admit that he was not very good and still acknowledge that, hey, this is his first career start. They got the win, but he's got to get better. His numbers officially, we got 6 of 21, $110. So that's an accurate number. I was looking at ESPN, and that is accurate. A long of 33 yards. And Eric All, 11 targets, 5 catches on those 11 targets. So not incredibly efficient. He had some drops, made a couple of great plays, 97 yards and a touchdown. He looks like the best player on offense right now. Caleb Johnson had, one catch for 13 yards. Deontay Vines, 3 targets, no catches. Nico Ragaini, 2 targets, 0 catches. Seth Anderson, 2 targets, 0 catches. LaShawn Williams, 1 target, 0 catches.
Caleb Brown didn't even play either. I was looking for him after I seen your tweet in the first half, and he wasn't in the second half at all. So I'm being intrigued to see why he wasn't in. And one more question I got is, obviously we love Drew, right? Drew doesn't miss a lot of kicks, right? And I'm not blaming it on Drew for missing kicks. It happens, right? But like, what do you think was going on? Because he did miss. The one got blocked, and the other one he missed. You don't really see him do that a lot.
Well, James, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to when I get off the line with you, I'm going to share some stats that are going to blow your mind. That will maybe explain it, maybe won't.
All right, sounds good.
You too. All right, Erica with the super chat. Thank you, Erica. They don't use wide receivers because the wide receivers drop the ball most of the time when the ball comes their way. Deacon needs to stop pushing so hard. At least we got the dub. Agree with the second part and the third part, Erica. I don't necessarily agree with the first part. They don't use wide receivers because wide receivers drop the ball most of the time when it comes their way. Again, I go back to the execution argument. This has been an issue for years with this Iowa offense, lack of wide receiver involvement. And they have had this issue with drops crop up for years. I think back to 2020. We were talking about drops in 2020. 2021. Tyrone Tracy, Nico Ragaini, Arlen Bruce. So, again, over multiple years, maybe it's more than just individuals not being able to catch the football. And I don't know schematically this offense is just friendly to wideouts. I don't know how else to describe that. This continues to be a talking point, and rightfully so. I don't think this offense can get anywhere close to taking the next step unless they can somehow get wide receivers better involved with the game plan. Thank you for the super chat, Erica. And Lemansky coming back with a super chat. Players are a reflection of their coaches. Furthermore, they bring them to campus for our futures. Alabama for years reflect Coach Saban. I agree, Lemansky. That's where I stand on it. Apparently, that's not a consensus opinion by everybody else. That's where I stand, and I'll double down on that stance because this is the college. It's less of an onus on the coaches in the NFL because guys are getting paid, and obviously college guys are getting paid some, but the NFL is 1,000% a business. With that being said, I also don't excuse the players. Like Deontay Vines has had issues with drops; those got to get resolved. Seth Anderson had a drop today on a very catchable throw toward the sideline. That's got to be caught. Caleb Brown's drop last week, inexcusable, has to be caught. But it's just, you don't blame one source. I tend to put more blame on the guys who are supposed to be coaching these inefficiencies out of these young athletes, these young teenagers. But that's where I stand on it. All right, we are waiting Coach Don Patterson, who should be here any minute, folks. Waiting on word. I've not heard from Don since the game ended, but usually it takes him a while. He's, of course, at the game. He was at Kinnick, and I'm sure it was a melee trying to get out of there because the fans stayed, I'm sure, to the end. It wasn't like it was a blowout. And so we'll get Coach Patterson on here shortly. let's go back to our call line. By the way, our call line is sponsored by Iowa Smokehouse. If you haven't checked out their awesome products, you can see the bottom ticker at the bottom of your screen. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Jerry's on the line. Jerry, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
How are you?
Doing good. I thought your analysis, Corey, was spot on, really, about the game, about Deacon, about moving forward. So, I mean, I don't know that I've seen a worse quarterback performance in college football this year. I'd be hard pressed to find that. And yet, they really could have won by double digits, if a couple other things had happened. So it's kind of amazing, just the Iowa way, I guess.
People can attribute it to the schedule only, but that's not exactly fair because Iowa's had tough schedules and managed to do that. Now, we've talked about this up and down, Jerry. The offense over these last 2.5 years is as bad as it's been under Kirk. So, with the soft schedule in 21 and the soft schedule this year, there's more forgiveness there with that offense. But they have been slightly better offensively in other years and managed to get by more difficult schedules. I mean, 2009 was not an easy schedule. They went 11-2 in 2009, had to go to Ohio State, played Michigan State on the road, played Michigan at home. Now, the Big Ten was different back then, I get it, but they managed to get to 11 wins that year, and the run game wasn't great. This is what the Kirk Ferentz formula is. I have my doubts, like our previous caller said as well. I have my doubts that Iowa can continue this. I don't think they can. I don't think they can continue this level of offense moving forward. I mean, it's got to return to at least bad. It can't be horrid. And right now I hate to say that, but it is overall, it's horrid. Rush game was better today, no question about it, but the pass game was bad.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that that's the team they have. There's no cavalry or cavalry coming, to help them out. And what people don't really talk about, Brian's fine on the X's and O's, but that's not really what goes into coordinating an offense. It really is. You've got to, first of all, get the Jimmies and the Joes. And so it's probably, the weakest talent level, overall on offense than they've had in a while. Because we remember back to when they beat USC in the Holiday Bowl, the offense was fine then, so they've got to recruit better talent. And that's what it comes down to. People don't want to talk about that, but that's really what it comes down to. It's really the players that make the difference. They put the onus on making sure they have talent on the back end, on the defense, and coached well, and they do that. But if they're going with Deacon, that means that either Labus is hurt or he's even worse than that, and most teams don't have two quarterbacks. They say if you have two quarterbacks, you have none, so the quarterback one has been knocked out of the season, and it's just going to be a real challenge. I think the last time I came on, I said, they're just got to right size their expectations, but it's amazing that they can still win with the defense they have, with the special teams, but it's a long season.
It's a long season, Jerry, and I agree with everything you just said. I think it's incredible. And as far as the Joe Labus conversation is concerned, somebody asked me at halftime, do you think they'll put in Joe? And I actually, here's the dumb thing. I actually said yes, because I thought they'll give Deacon one more drive. And if Deacon doesn't show him anything on that drive, I don't think they have it's not like the Petrus, whatever that was over the 3 years, where I think the entire room was just a lot of inexperience. Joe Labus was really young. Alex Padilla, they obviously didn't have much confidence in Alex Padilla. They didn't have any confidence in Deuce Hogan. Kirk Ferentz made that clear at the end of 2021. Yeah. So I just thought, hey, they've actually seen Joe Labus in a game against Kentucky. They'd rather put him in because they know he's not going to screw this up. But I don't know that they do. I think it's pretty clear they don't have much of any confidence in him. Keep in mind, Deacon Hill was buried on the depth chart at Wisconsin. He's about to transfer to Fordham.
He was passed on the depth chart.
Exactly. Iowa pulls Deacon Hill in, and what happens? He jumps Joe Labus within a couple of weeks at spring practice. So that tells me the coaching staff really does not have confidence in Joe Labus. And that was right after Joe Labus won the Music City Bowl against Kentucky.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like coming into the season when there's all this positivity from the coaches, from parents about all the growth in the offensive line. And yes, there has been growth, but I think a lot of that was, you know, almost like, I mean, it's coaching, right? You've got to instill confidence. It's like Tony Robbins, you've got to first, you got to believe you can. Back in Hayden's days, they never did ones against ones. He came in and had their ones go against the twos, offense, defense, and so forth, because it was all about building their confidence. Because they had been losing for so many years. So there's no way he's going to replace. He was going to get rid of Deacon because he's got to let him not be looking over his shoulder and believe, hey, we just got to work through it and so forth. And if on the bad side, I wish that Ferentz would be more open to innovation, a la Cooper DeJean was a high school quarterback. You could bring him in. I mean, you used Laporta to run the Wildcat in the game against Kentucky.
First of all, that was stupid. First of all, that was stupid that they brought it to run Sam Laporta as a Wildcat quarterback. That was stupid.
Right, because they could have done Cooper DeJean.
Well, also, Sam Laporta was coming off a semi-serious lower leg.
Right, but my point is, if he can do that for Sam Laporta, what is keeping you from doing that for an even better athlete who played quarterback in high school, who can throw the ball? Because what it comes down to with the Wildcat is you got to have the realistic threat of being able to throw the ball.
Correct.
You've got Cooper DeJean, some sort of generational athlete. So it's really inexcusable not to use him in every possible way. It really is. But I mean, it's almost like I've watched Iowa for my whole life. And if there's a lot of anger and buzz from the fans, sometimes what Ferentz does is he digs in. I think out of spite. He's like, I'm not going to do that, So he's not going to get rid of Brian. It's never going to happen. Brian goes, he goes, because his great strength is he doesn't change. He sticks to his principles. And his great weakness is he doesn't change, sometimes out of spite, because he's going to do it his way.
Jerry, I got to let you go, but a lot of truth in what you just said, sir. Thank you for the call.
Yep. Have a great night.
A lot of truth to Jerry's call. Appreciated that. And yeah, I think he's got the right idea on a lot of these things. And Teachers Grass Garden and Grounds LLC, new QB, same QB coach, equals same results. I really feel bad for the Iowa quarterbacks with his tutelage. What are weekly practice plans like? We have seen this quarterback show for 4 years. I feel for the QBs. I understand the perspective. And that's, again, looking at the tree, not the apple, if you know what I mean by that. So I'm about to call Don Patterson, make sure he's okay. I guess I'm being a little impatient. I'm just used to Don being right there. Don's quick to the screen. So anyways, we'll get Don here in a few minutes, hopefully. Let's see here. Brian, I did not get your super chat, Brian. I got the super chat. I did not get the actual chat. So Brian, I'll see if I can find this. Thank you for trying. Let's see if it's somewhere else. Brian, I apologize. I do not see your chat here, but thank you for the donation. If that's all you were trying to do, thank you. And if I see a comment from you, I'll try to throw it up there, but I do not see it. Let's go back to, we had our phone. So by the way, if you're on the phone line, if you call the number and you see the number below, 515-635-1601, if you're new to the show, here's what's going to happen. You're going to call that line. We've got 2 phone lines open on the same number, and I'm going to put you on hold. You're not going to hear anything. So call in on your phone. If you can listen on your tablet, your computer in the meantime, you might be on hold for a while, but call in on your phone. I'm going to put you on hold. And when you're up in the queue, we'll throw you on, but don't hang up. It's not going to jump you in front of anybody else. So, and again, I'm being a little bit more patient with callers right now because Don Patterson's not here. And again, once we get Coach Patterson, we're going to have to speed things along. I promised James that I was going to talk about the Drew Stevens numbers. These are unbelievable. These are fascinating numbers when you think about it. And this is from a pretty good source. It'll stay anonymous for the sake of this show and for these stats. But after today, according to this source, which I cannot confirm to a T these stats, but with a little bit of anecdotal evidence I've seen over the last few weeks since I was kind of tipped off to this stat, those numbers have rang true. Drew Stevens, dating back to him being a sophomore in high school, All right. On field goals between 40 and 45 yards. After today, between 40 and 45 yards, Drew Stevens is 2 of 9. 2 of 9. That's an incredible stat. You know why? Because this is a really good field goal kicker. Drew Stevens on every other kick, 100%, not counting blocks. According to the source that talked to me, I cannot confirm that. I didn't even go back. I didn't have time before I got the stat. Didn't have time to go back and look at the game log from last year. I could go back and try to find his high school stats. But according to the source that reached out to me, not counting blocks, and there was one block today from like 49 yards, Drew Stevens is perfect from 46 yards plus, dating back to his sophomore year of high school. And he is 100% from under 40%, or excuse me, from under 40 yards. That's just an incredible stat. I think I talked about that the other day, but that stayed the same today. He had a miss today from we had the block, and then he had the other miss from 44 there at the end. It would have basically ended the game because it would have pushed the lead to 20. What was the score at that point? 23-7. 23-7. Is that right? Yeah, 23-7. Brian says, please run a bootleg instead of up the middle 3 times. Boy, wouldn't it be nice, and maybe going in a little bit different direction, but wouldn't it be nice when I was out there in empty personnel if they actually could run the football? But they can't, because they got a guy who's not mobile, and they haven't had a guy who's been mobile for, Nate Stanley. We saw him run a couple of boots. Frankly, we saw, a couple of empty sets and runs up the middle. Ran a QB draw on a touchdown. I'm trying to think what game that was. Maybe Northwestern in 2020. I'd have to go back and look. But for the most part, Iowa doesn't have the personnel at quarterback to do that. Wouldn't it be nice if they did? And maybe Marco Lainez or James Reesar, QBs of the future, can be that. But a gimpy Cade McNamara was not going to be that. Deacon Hill is not the answer there. Now, if Joe Labus and or Marco Lainez saw any time this year, they would give you that run threat. But that's why I don't like Iowa going out and empty, is they're not a threat to run the football at the quarterback spot. So anyways, is what it is. Thank you for the super chat, Brian. Thank you for both of your super chats. Appreciate that. And Kerry wanted to know about Peacock. Anybody else having problems with Peacock? I had no problems. In fact, kudos to Peacock. I streamed it. I casted the screen. I have a Chromecast, casted Peacock, and did not have a single interruption. Not one. And that's credit to Peacock and our internet. So appreciate that. Didn't have a single issue with the stream today. I'm sorry you did, Kerry. Hopefully you can get that figured out. But we're not going to be seeing another game on Peacock exclusively. I don't know that there's a chance of another one this year. There will be basketball games on Peacock for certain. And I'm assuming wrestling matches on Peacock as well. All right, let's go back to our call line. We've got Ryan calling our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Corey. Hey, real quick. Since I donated, I get an extra minute.
You donated? Where'd you donate?
I did. I did last week. Anyway, I'm wearing my DePaul Blue Demons hat because I'm a DePaul alumni. And next week I got a problem. Iowa plays DePaul in women's basketball at Kinnick Stadium. So who the hell do I root for?
Are you going to that game?
No, I'm not.
Well, first of all, that game benefits the Children's Hospital, so it doesn't really matter who wins.
It does. Well, I don't know, but just as a fan, I'm a dual alumni. I went to Iowa and I went to DePaul. I got degrees from both. Who do I root for?
You root for Iowa.
Garbage can.
There you go, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, let's talk football.
Let's talk football.
All right.
What you got, Ryan?
Couple things. I was actually, it's ironic because on a day when you do not have a quarterback with any accuracy whatsoever, Brian actually called a pretty darn good game. He threw the ball downfield. Now, ironically, I know we had 0 wide receiver connections, and that's just humiliating. We had Eric All, with all our catches except for a 13-yard catch by Caleb. But he at least did throw down the field. And I'm going to give Brian a little bit of credit for that. I thought that was encouraging. I'm going to assume DeJean can be a little more accurate in the future. I'm sure they're going to clean things up, as you like to hear, you know. And one other question I had, Corey, you know, it seems to me like instead of a 25-point mandate by Snaggletooth, who's gone now, we could have gone with maybe total offense, right? Like you need to be in the top half of 65, 75 even of total offense, because if we would have gotten 20, 23 points, but 320 yards, you wouldn't have quite the mutiny that we're having today, right? I mean, we won, great, but we were 291 yards total offense, which still sucks. It might make us 129 over 130 in the country, something like that. So I was wondering, like, do you think maybe Kirk and Brian know something we don't know? In other words, like this point mandate thing isn't really going to matter at the end, because I know there were 2 missed field goals. One was blocked. One was kind of a controversial 5-yard penalty, and they were missed, whatever. But there was a few opportunities to, you know, put the rub into it and throw a extra touchdown just to secure things. And, you know, it was still Ferentz ball at the end of the day.
What makes you think they could? What opportunity did they have to throw an extra touchdown?
Late. Before Purdue scored that second touchdown when it was 20-7 in the fourth quarter, you know, they ran it 3 times and punted and could have probably thrown it. Now, granted, DeJean wasn't real good today.
Yeah, that's what I was going
I
to
know,
say.
and I'm just wondering. I mean, I get it. Winning trumps everything, but when you got these crazy mandates, and hell, you got Jason Garrett saying on the broadcast, I've never heard anything like this. And, you know, that's been pretty much a common theme with all the broadcasters on our games, right? It makes me wonder if, you know, since Mr. I don't go to the dentist is gone from now, do they maybe know something we don't know?
Well, this comment here from Prisoner's Dilemma is fair. No one likes the conservative play calling in the fourth quarter, but it won the game for us. You don't want Hill throwing the ball when he was off by a couple of yards on a lot on his throws. So it's fair to say, and I know you brought up something in the second quarter, but late in the second half, the way Kirk operates in general, even without a backup quarterback in the game, is he's almost never going to put the ball in the air when he has an opportunity to run clock ahead. So
yeah,
it would be a total, and we've seen him kind of meander his way away from maybe some of his core principles at times. I think about the end of the Western Michigan game and that conversation we had then. But boy, that would be such a, like I said, a diversion from the way he typically operates in those situations. First of all, what he should be upset about is the fact they got to delay a game that ended up pushing Drew Stevens back to 44 yards and you missed the kick. That's what Kirk should be upset about, because boy, that delay a game set everybody back 44 yards.
And Prisoner's Dilemma's comment, I 100% agree with. Which kind of brings my point back, you know, full circle, which is, why wouldn't you say total offense as opposed to some kind of stupid point mandate, right?
Well, because Kirk doesn't believe in total offense.
I know. And so if you really want to, you make it a thing. Like, okay, you want to win 20-17, you want to win 10-7, whatever it is, fine. But you better gain yards doing it, as opposed to 3-and-outing the death of us and the defense. Now, I honestly thought today, Brian called a pretty solid game. He really did. Now, it really helps when there were, a few holes where Caleb could have drove a semi through, and that sure helped. And that was awfully nice to see. I don't have any issues with the way they called the game today. I really don't. It's just, I think of the stupid mandate at 25, and I think, you know what? If you really want change, you should have gone with total offense. And that's a question maybe for Don Patterson when he comes on. Like, wouldn't it be more productive to say you need to be in the top 75 in total offense versus a point mandate? Because I agree, if you got the game won, don't rock the boat, right?
Sure. Yeah. Ryan, I got Coach Patterson and Tom Kakert waiting on hold. I'm gonna let you slide. Feel free to jump in later if you want, but appreciate your call, sir.
Yeah, just ask Coach Patterson about that question if you could. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. All right, folks, let's add in the man of the hour, Coach Don Patterson. Don, you're looking spiffy. You clean up well, and you cleaned up for the show, I can see.
Well, I apologize, Corey. I was listening to you on my phone, but I will admit when I got home, I had some loaded potato soup, and I knew I better eat then because I knew I wasn't going to be able to eat for the next 4 hours. So
no. We already established this is not going 4 hours. I've already broken to all the callers. We're shortening the calls now that you're on. We are not on here for 4 hours. I've already been on here an hour, so we're not going another 4 hours. We're not going to go another 3 hours. So, Don, before we get to your takes, we're going to, again, be on here for a while. Let's get to HawkeyeReport.com's own Tom Kakert, who is waiting on hold with us. Tom, welcome.
Oh, hello. How are you guys?
Hey, Tom.
Doing good, Tom.
Coach, how are you doing?
Doing all right.
Good.
It's good to see you, sir. And I'm assuming you're still there at Kinnick. You are through with media availability with Kirk Ferentz. Iowa with the 20-14 win over the Purdue Boilermakers in typical Iowa fashion, building a lead and then using that defense to run the clock out and eventually put the seal on this game and on this win. What was Kirk's overall demeanor in the press conference?
No, I thought he was, pretty happy to get the win. I mean, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty. He just, a win is a win is a win. And Coach P will tell you that too, that it's just, nothing beats winning, and it's not a beauty contest. It's getting to the winner's circle, and they got there. A couple of interesting things that we found out that the defensive line came into this game with only 3 sacks on the year. They held a players only, defensive line only meeting. Joe Evans, Logan Lee kind of leading things, but more Joe Evans. And the result today, 6 sacks, their best performance by far this year. Logan Lee had 10 tackles from the defensive tackle position, which you don't see very often, including a pair of sacks. So that seemed to hit the mark pretty well in the game. So that was kind of one of the interesting nuggets that we got from, at least from the players. Kirk didn't even know about the meeting. I brought it up to him, and he was like, "No, I didn't know about it, but maybe they should have more of those." So he was pretty happy with the results.
Don, what did you see, just to jump to you real quick, what did you see different from the defensive line this week that helped produce the 6 sacks compared to, again, like Tom said, they were one of the worst teams in the country statistically to this point in actually getting home?
Yeah, in the earlier games, it seemed like so often, the ball came out quickly. We were trying to get home, but we weren't quite good enough to get that done. Today you saw, I don't know how many of the 6 I would classify as coverage sacks, but certainly several. Kurt had to hold the ball a long time. He ran around and extended plays, but sometimes we still tracked him down. Other times, of course, he tried to throw the ball away rather than get tagged with the sack yardage. And, of course, sometimes he got penalized for that. So I just thought it was a good combination of maybe a little more relentless effort up front and coverage, because he had difficulty finding an open receiver any number of times.
Tom, I'm curious. There were a number of guys that were missing today. DeJean Lee was out apparently due to an injury. We saw Addison Estringa out. Caleb Brown didn't see the field. Can you talk about availability of some of those guys?
Yeah, and even Mason Richmond. In fact, Kirk, I had heard last night that he wasn't going to play, and even Kirk confirmed that last night when they went to bed, he did not think that Mason Richmond was going to play, and Mason played every snap, I think, at left tackle, and he was dealing with some pain. So credit to that kid for toughing it out. Obviously Nick DeJean missing. And then Caleb Brown, he was asked about Caleb Brown, and he said he was out due to personal reasons. So that could mean just about anything. So, it seems like he was missing today. Maybe we'll learn more Tuesday about his status. But he was out, not dressed, not on the sidelines. And, on the plus side, it was good to get Caleb Johnson back after him being out for basically a month. And he let us know that actually, everybody was making a big deal about how he was struggling early in the year running the football. The initial injury to his ankle happened during fall camp. He said YA Black fell on his ankle and he didn't feel right since then. And now he feels like he's Caleb Johnson again. And he looked like he was Caleb Johnson again. So getting him healthy, maybe they get Jazzy and Patterson back next week and to go with LeSean, and they'll have their full complement of backs. Kirk also thought that Coach Patterson, I'm curious your thoughts on this, said DeJean was kind of like that golfer that's kind of swinging from his heels a little bit, a little tight in the first half, just kind of squeezing the life out of the ball if you're a pitcher kind of thing, where you're trying too hard in the first half, and maybe he relaxed a little bit. That play to the touchdown pass to Eric All, that was something they had worked on all week and thought they could get that play, and they did.
Yeah, Corey's always heard me say this, Tom. Good quarterbacks have a very, very grooved throwing motion. Yep. And the better you can groove it, the more consistent you'll be. Now, there are guys, I'll admit, like Mahomes, they can throw from all kinds of arm angles and still get the ball on target. But in general, for the average quarterback, it needs to be a very smooth, grooved throwing motion. And that's when you end up with greater and greater consistency. Don't know that we have that right now. Typically, when a guy throws the ball hard, I remember this vividly with Spencer, he was more likely to overthrow when he really had to gun the ball. The ball sailed on him. It happens that way for a lot. We're just talking about maybe overstriding ever slightly with that front foot, or maybe just simply releasing the ball a little bit too early. And I really hadn't seen in DeJean in the past, we hadn't seen much of him, really hadn't seen that as being an issue, but today you did see some balls that very definitely sailed. So it's something for him to work on. And as you've heard me say already, the best quarterbacks do not rely strictly on a fastball. The best baseball pitchers do not rely strictly on a fastball either. If you have a chance to take a little pace off the football and make it a little more catchable, then you do it. That's what the guys on Sunday do. All the velocity is not the same. And I'm just talking about, instead of throwing 75 miles an hour, just backing it off to 70. That makes it more catchable. In theory, it might give you a little better chance to be on target too, because we're looking for that smooth delivery that we equate to golf a little bit. And some way with golf, those guys, it's amazing. They can hit 280 yards and it doesn't even appear that they're swinging that hard, but they're hitting it clean. They're hitting it pure every time, almost every time. And so that's something that Deacon can work on maybe and improve over the next few weeks. We'll hope that all gets done.
Real quick, and this, I guess I'll throw it to you, Tom, first. I'm guessing it didn't get brought up given the win. Was there any question to Kirk about, did he have a decision to make at halftime? Did he consider moving to Joe Labas?
It got the Labas thing got brought up, and he shot that way down. He's like, what? Why? So there was never any consideration to go to Joe Labas at halftime. None at all.
Well, that's an interesting response. Don, maybe there was a little bit of cynicism there from Kirk, but were you thinking maybe we're looking at a change at halftime? Given the,
to be honest with you, I would have been very surprised if that would have happened. Simply because I think they've it appears they've very definitely decided that Deacon offers them a better chance to win than Joey.
Yep.
Well, I understand that.
That was kind of Kirk's message was Deacon's our quarterback.
Yeah, but see, that's not going to. I'm not. Believe me, I'm not down on Deacon after his first career start. I'm going to make that clear. But obviously, that's been the narrative. That was the narrative for 3 years with Spencer Petras, and that got under the fan base's skin. I mean, at some point, performance does matter, but at the same time, maybe that's reason to not expect Kirk to toy with the quarterback, even if it is Deacon. I mean, I guess my thinking on this was too, Tom. Deacon, it's not like he had built up some great trust.
He didn't have a lot of equity. Yeah,
like Spencer Petras, I guess, had, because he'd been a part of a lot of wins. So I just thought maybe he does go to Joe, who did have some equity with that win in the Music City Bowl.
Yeah. Hey, Coach,
well, let's not forget.
Coach, let me ask you a question quick. There were no completions to a wide receiver today. That's the first time in the Ferentz era. Can you remember any time during Hayden's era where you guys had that? Otherwise, are we looking at like Bob Cummings stats or Frank Lauterbur, or what are we doing?
I'm trying to figure out if we ever had a quarter without a receiver catching a ball. Not sure that we have. We probably had a few, but not many.
And Don, just one tight end caught a pass, and the only other person to catch a ball was Caleb Johnson.
Was a running back. Yeah, so that's what I'm getting at. Like, there was no wide receiver catches today.
So 6 completions and tight ends had 5 of them. Is that right?
Yep, one guy, one tight end.
Eric All had 5.
He had all 5.
And Caleb Johnson had 1 for 13 yards, and that was the total.
Now, they did target, in their defense, they did target 7 times.
Yep.
Targeted wideouts 7 times?
Correct.
Wide receivers, yeah.
Well, I do remember the numbers after 4 games. We targeted wideouts 35 times, only completed 14. That's 40%. That's ridiculously low. And as we know, they weren't all poor throws. Some of them were dropped over those 4 games. And even though we had catches in game 5, we also had 4 wideout drops in game 5. So I think we caught 6 and dropped 4. So that's 6 out of 10. But of course, that doesn't allow for balls that were just inaccurately thrown. And, it's conceivable that a receiver will misplay a ball, of course, and it won't show up as a drop. It'll simply show up as another incompletion. And yet, truthfully, if you wanted to assign blame, you might have to blame the receiver for not judging the ball well. That happens sometimes. But the bottom line, we still got to find a better way to distribute the ball in our passing game, because it's going to catch up with us as time plays out, I'm afraid. Simple example: if the ball does not go to the wideout, then why in God's name would you ever play half coverage against Iowa? You know what I mean by half coverage? Roll corners, safeties playing half the field in the back end. Why would you bother to do that? Why wouldn't you go single coverage outside, even if you decide to press them rather than give them soft edge, and then load the box, of course, or for that matter, combo a tight end. Nothing says you can't assign 2 defenders to guard 1 person. That's a possibility that you might see down the road too, simply because we favor 83 so much. wouldn't shock me at all if we got some combo coverage on the tight end going forward. I'm not trying to give any opponent any ideas. It's just, they can come up with that same conclusion that I just did. Certain situations, maybe you double the tight end. You bracket him. You have inside, outside coverage. If he releases inside, he's defended by one person. If he's released outside, of course, if he releases with any width, he's defended by a different person.
I was just going to say, I know Addison Estringa hasn't totaled a ton of receptions this year, but
2 for 19 yards.
Yeah, but given the tight end involvement and given the injury to Luke Lachey, Addison Estringa being out of this game does take away another, you could call him primary weapon in the passing game because of how heavily involved the tight ends are. So we didn't see any receptions, I was surprised we didn't see a single target to Steven Stilianos. We saw Johnny Pascuzzi get in there and play.
So Zach Ortworth in there on a 4 tight end set.
Well?
Yeah, he was in on one, I think at least one play.
Okay.
That it was the Eric All tight end touchdown catch.
Okay.
He was in there.
Well, Tom, anything else stood out to you from the press conference with Kirk? I mean, I know that the Caleb Brown thing is, like you said, is going to be a hot topic come Tuesday. We still have not seen him. Have we seen him log a catch?
No. He's got two runs for 9 yards.
He's had a couple of targets, but
yeah,
no reception.
And one drop last weekend, right?
Yeah, he had a drop. So yeah, we'll see what happens with him. We don't know exactly what's going on with him. So could be family related stuff, could be some other stuff. I'm gonna just wait and see if they have more to say.
Can I just throw one more kind of a intricacy out to you, Tom, that I thought was funny, maybe not funny, but just interesting. And you have made it very clear. You've had conversations with Luke Lachey, and you've stated he's out for the year. Did you notice on the availability report today that Cade McNamara was labeled out for a year and Luke Lachey was not?
Yeah, I noticed that. That was interesting. Maybe they think they can get Luke back for the bowl game. Provided they get one more win and they're there. And let's be honest, guys. Next week is probably for the Big Ten West title, I think. If Iowa wins that game, I know a lot can happen. Coach P is going to yell at me about this, but I
think the winner has a leg up. That's true, but I think it's a little premature to say the winner. It's going to be settled next weekend. I don't think that's true. It might be.
You're in the driver's seat. You're in the driver's seat for sure.
I think it's real quick. I think it's an elimination game. Maybe this is being really. I think it's an elimination game for Iowa because they already have a Big Ten loss, and then you go on the road and lose a game. Now you're down. You're really behind the 8 ball. You're down a full game plus the tiebreaker, or you're down a game and a half plus the tiebreaker. So yeah, I agree.
And the Badgers only have one difficult crossover game. Is that right?
Ohio State.
Just Ohio State.
Yep. And they do get them at home. They get Ohio State at home.
They get them in Madison.
Who are their other two? Do you know offhand?
They had Rutgers today.
Indiana, I believe, is another one.
And Indiana.
And you'd have to consider Rutgers to be a little bit of a hurdle, and they got over that one just fine.
Yep. So, and Iowa's got Rutgers coming in November too, and that might be their second toughest remaining game, to be honest.
Absolutely might be. Yeah. Rutgers is less likely to beat themselves, I think.
Yeah. They're a smart team. They play good defense. They were competitive. I didn't see a lot of the game today, but just kind of bits and pieces that I did see, it just seemed like they were very competitive with Wisconsin. They got down 17-0, but they hung around. It was 24-13. I mean, they did all right. And also, one other thing, Kirk did say he kind of indicated maybe some news on Noah Shannon on Tuesday. So keep that in. It sounds very positive. So maybe there's a potential that they get Noah Shannon back, and that would really help, I think, even give that defensive line a bigger boost moving forward, because then you could probably plug him in. I'm sure he'd be ready to go for 25-30 snaps. I think that's realistic from him on Saturday up in Madison, and that gives you a guy that one of the areas that I think they've struggled with this year is getting gashed up the middle. And that's a run stuffer that you're going to get plugged in there that's going to be fully healthy. So he'll have to get some rust off, but I think he'd really help them stuff in the run.
Yeah, I think that is a little bit of a concern going forward. We always talk about efficiency in your run game, and the basic standard would be 4 yards per carry, unless, of course, it's 3rd and 2, and obviously then anything for a first down is another efficient play. But today, and I was going to give a lot of credit to Mockleby. I thought he ran with a lot of effort and a lot of toughness, and he certainly earned his yards. So that's a little concern going forward. There were times, when they 4 and 5 yarded us a little bit. But the good news, of course, is we didn't give up any big runs again. We're sounding that we're not going to give up the big play, it appears.
A lot of bending, Don.
A lot of bending.
A lot of bending.
I'd be shocked if you didn't tell me that Purdue had more first downs than we did. I suspect they did.
Yes, it wasn't even close. It was 21-12. Is that right?
Here's the other thing. I need to look this up this week, but Iowa might lead the country in kind of the reverse time of possession because of that Penn State game. And then today it was 35, 40, somewhere around 35 minutes.
And Tom, real quick, let me pull it up here because I'm on the schedule. Let's not forget about
35. They had 35, yeah, and Iowa State had a bunch. I'm guessing Iowa defense has probably played more plays than just about any D1 defense in the country.
Yeah, you're probably right. The one place I'm sure we got beaten today too was critical downs because they converted any number of 3rd and mediums, 3rd and longs even.
Well, they were really good last week against Illinois on critical downs. That was one of my keys going to the game. Is I thought Iowa had at least stay competitive with them and 3rd down efficiency.
9 of 19, 9 of 19 Purdue today on thirds.
And how about 4th?
4th down. Why am I not seeing that?
0 of 2.
Yeah, they were 0 of 2 on 4th.
So combined is 9 for 21.
Yeah.
And what did we have today? I'm sure it was less.
3 of
13.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big disparity.
And here's real quick, I was going to say, my biggest concern from that, and obviously attribute that to some of the passing game inadequacies. You go 3 of 13 on 3rd downs, despite running the ball as well as they did today. You typically stay ahead of the chains, right? Those 3rd downs those numbers are going to go up.
But if you really go back and look at our rush totals, let's not forget half of number 2's yardage came on one play.
Yep.
And he had another run that must have been 40 yards or so, right?
33 yards. Yeah.
33.
Hold on a second, Don. Now I'm going to defend the Iowa run game a little bit. LaShawn Williams, 13 carries for 74 yards, an average of almost 6 a carry. So
and not too many of those were double digit. There were just a lot of good 5 and 6 yarders.
Log of
7. Yeah, the one where he got grabbed by the turf monster on a 17-yard run.
Oh, yeah. Remember that one?
Yeah. The numbers
those damn yard lines getting away at all the wrong times.
Even if you take away the 67-yard run, I believe Caleb Johnson still averaged around a little over 5 a carry. So,
well, that's because one of them was 33 or whatever it was. That's 100 yards on 2 plays. So what was his total?
He had 134 yards on 17 carries.
Okay, so 60 what? What was the TD?
67.
And then 33, that's 100 out of 134. At least 34 yards on how many carries? 15?
Well, 34 yards. Yeah, around 34 yards on 15 carries. You're right.
That's 2.25, roughly.
That's not good. But as Tom said a few weeks ago, you cannot take those big runs. Those are part of the story.
Yes, but the key of staying ahead of the change is being efficient with your runs.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So that's why you need a little bit of both to work in your favor.
And LaShawn was more consistent again as far as gaining consistent yardage. And I think, honestly, once Jazz Patterson gets back, I just think the way he runs, and you wouldn't think that maybe given the size of a guy like Caleb Johnson, but we've talked about Jazz Patterson kind of hitting the hole harder, being more of that downhill runner. So my guess is getting him back will be big.
Yeah, it would be interesting if you looked at an entire season, which back, assuming the blocking's all the same, which we know it's not, but for the sake of argument, which back gives us the best chance for efficient runs, who's got the best chance to be efficient 4 yards or more at the highest rate versus who's the home run hitter. We know who the home run hitter is. It's number 2. And again, just to remind our listeners, one reason why Caleb has deceptive stride length. So even though he's not turning his legs over as quickly as you might think, he's actually running a little bit faster than what you expect. As a defensive player, you're a little bit surprised simply because his stride length is a little bit longer than most backs.
Well, Tom, appreciate you jumping on as always. We always enjoy talking to you. And be sure to, if people are listening, be sure to check out HawkeyeReport.com. I know, Tom, you've got a bunch of work to do this evening, and you'll have post-game coverage heading into tomorrow as well. And, of course, as we get prepped for Wisconsin. So travel safe back to the Quad Cities, and we'll talk to you next Saturday.
Okay. Thanks. Good talking to you guys. Have a good night, Coach Patterson and Corey.
Thanks, Tom.
Take care, Tom.
Lomansky, appreciate the super chat. Lomansky, Don, Tom, and Corey, 3 big brains on one show. Don, how do you feel being associated with me as it relates to your brain?
Well, I've always had you pegged as being way above average, Corey, so I'll take it as a compliment if I'm in there with you.
Oh, I appreciate that. And Lomansky here, appreciate the super chat. Lomansky says, Don, if you had a number 1 quarterback out for the season, offensive stats were poor, would you put in a package for Cooper and try it late in today's game? Really upset the Hawks failed to get that first down late to end it. We've talked about this subject, Cooper DeJean.
Yeah. Cooper, despite what we think, he's human. He does not have an S on his chest. So my point is, we got to be careful not to wear him out. Plays defense all day long, covers punts, returns punts. That's a lot of snaps. And if you notice on those punts, one reason the guy had the fair catch, it was either number 2 or number 3 that was right there in his mustache when he caught it. So Cooper's using up a lot of energy just to cover a punt too, because it's not easy to be in that punt returner's face. You got to really work hard to get down the field to be able to get that done.
Just for the record, we can pull up the tape, Don, but when I asked you about this Cooper DeJean subject last year, you were not real dismissive of the idea. You thought it was worth looking at, even though...
I think it very definitely is worth looking at. You've also heard me say, maybe even in advance of using him, maybe as a Wildcat quarterback, here's a simple thing to do. It doesn't require any practice time. Use him as a decoy. If you're Wisconsin and Cooper's in the game, why in God's name would you expect that anybody else would have the ball other than Cooper if he's in on an offensive snap? So,
well,
why not?
Did you hear the caller earlier that brought up Cooper and the Wildcat, Don? Just the idea of having a guy. First of all, they ran Wildcat before. You go back to 2020, they ran quite a bit of Wildcat with Amir Smith-Marset, Tyler Goodson taking snaps, Mekhi Sargent, and Tyrone Tracy was involved with those as well, ironically enough. We saw him must have gotten dinged up at halftime because we didn't see him in the second half. But my point is, those guys weren't necessarily threats to throw the ball. Cooper DeJean would be a threat to throw the ball because he's a former quarterback.
Right.
I just I don't think anybody's advocating for him to be full-time on offense. But what would be the problem with having 3 or 4 plays ready for him for any given day, any given game? Are 3 or 4 snaps really going to make the difference? Heck, Don, they're running, they gave up had 97 plays on the field against Penn State. Are 3 or 4 offensive snaps really going to be make or break for Cooper DeJean?
It's clear that you've never played 97 snaps in a Division I football game.
No, but I'm saying 97 to 100 is that the breaking point? You're
stating if he only has 70 against Wisconsin, then clearly he's got some more fuel in the tank. So why not use it on offense?
I don't know about that. I don't know.
Well, one way to look at it, Corey, our offense needs a boost. Is there anything wrong with looking for that boost, looking high and low for that boost? One option would clearly be Cooper DeJean. I have no problem with that. I don't see any problem with it. The sad reality is if you did put him out there for 1 snap, and if he did get injured on that play, then our fans would, some group of our fans would say, why in God's name were you guys stupid enough to play Cooper on offense? You and I both agree that that's faulty thinking because he could get injured on defense too. Right.
And Don, as our caller brought up earlier, this same coaching staff didn't hesitate to jokingly put in Sam Laporta for some Wildcat quarterback in the bowl game last year. Oh, by the way, coming off a lower extremity injury.
Yeah, I was not happy with that decision. I remember that.
But I'm just saying the coaching staff made that decision.
Yeah. Well, Sam should have revolted. Sam should have said, let me get this straight. I have a chance to go play on Sunday, and you want me to be a Wildcat quarterback after coming off injury? I'm good. Thanks, but no thanks.
Well,
but Sam's a team player, so Sam's like, oh, okay, let's go.
Absolutely.
Thankfully, he wasn't injured.
I want to thank our sponsor, Iowa Smokehouse. If you want a better quality snack for game day or any day of the week, check out what they offer. iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeyes. That's the plural form, Hawkeyes, at iowasmokehouse.com for 15% off your order. They've got beef jerky, meat sticks, steak bites, ketchups, barbecue sauces, salsa. Tasting is believing when you're talking about snacks and food in general. Visit iowasmokehouse.com. Use that code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. And also be sure to give Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm in Des Moines a call. He'll get you a great quote on insurance, whether we're talking auto insurance, home, renters, business, life insurance. They spend countless hours taking care of their customers and meet annually with each one to discuss possible changes, adjustments, needs that need to be addressed. Call Brad at 515-256-6480, 515-256-6480, or online at bradvanmeter.com. You do not have to live in Des Moines to benefit from Brad and his team, his great service down at State Farm on Fleur Drive in Des Moines. Again, one more time, that's that number is 515-256-6480. We appreciate Brad and his team for sponsoring postgame coverage. And let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Welcome to Corey. Corey, welcome. Corey, are you with us? I cannot hear Corey.
This is clearly a Corey sandwich, and I'm sandwiched by Corey's.
Hello.
Hey, Corey, how are you?
Great, guys. Great hearing your take. I just want to be transparent here. I am a KF supporter. I think that Brian called an excellent game, the second game in a row. So I'm gonna voice that clearly. That said, I went into this game thinking we would lose it. I did not expect to win this game, and I'm very impressed. I think our defensive line was a big determining factor. I thought they'd throw the ball all over the field on us, and I feel like our D line got there just in time. What we saw that late drive in the second half by Purdue, I thought we were going to see a lot more of that, and I'm just really impressed by our defense. And I will also say that I think, and I'm not an expert, and I would like Don's take on this, but I feel like we took what the defense gave us. The tight ends were open. I think that maybe our receivers were just more covered up by the coverages, and the tight ends happened to be more open. So we took what they offered. That said, really disappointing to see, a similar situation as Spencer Petras with these missiles launched over the heads of our receivers and whatnot. I think it's just a matter of nerves. And then it just comes down to, can these QBs calm their nerves? And it looks like in the second half, DeJean was able to turn it around a little bit and make some of the throws. And it looks a little more promising, but yeah, I'm not confident going into Madison. I am not confident. And, but I would like your take, Don. Do you feel as though the offensive play calling has been better the last couple of games? And then, secondly, do you think it's the fault of Brian Ferentz that the wide receivers were not targeted, or basically, it comes down to what the quarterback sees and what the defense is giving us. That's what we're going to take. And I will hush up.
Well,
I want to say one last thing. Corey promised he wouldn't hit 4 hours. I think you guys were at 3 hours and 53 minutes last week. So
let me take it a step further, Corey. I promise we won't go 3 hours and 53 minutes this week.
Okay, I'm done, guys. I'll listen.
Corey. Appreciate it, sir.
And Corey, I had my heart set on going 4 hours, and you're going to deny me, huh?
I'm going to deny you, Don.
Okay.
Just your thoughts, first of all, on that first question from Corey. Did you think that play calling has been better these last 2 weeks?
Well, I said a week ago, I saw some progress because we started the game, you might recall, by purposely calling plays that gave our receivers a chance to catch and run out after the catch. The first 3 plays of the game, right, were 3 completions, 2 of which I think were to wideouts and maybe 1 to the tight end. Is that right? As I recall.
Yes.
So we made an effort to get the ball to the wideouts last week. I believe they caught 6 a week ago. And there were 4 others that were dropped, legitimately dropped. So we might have had as many as 10 catches by wideouts last week. This week, I don't know how many. They were hardly even targeted, right? Very few balls even went in their direction.
Well, there were 7. No, well, there were 7 targets to the receivers.
7. Excuse me.
7 targets to receivers, 2 to Nico Ragnini, 2 to Seth Anderson, and 3 to Deontay Vines.
Yeah.
By the way, real quick, I'm just going to add this in too. I would agree with, not that Corey probably wants to hear my opinion because you're obviously the coach, Don, but Brian has been attempting to attack downfield. We just couldn't connect. Right now, I mean,
Correct.
He's having problems with reining that arm in.
And that was true again today, of course. And even it was true. I've already said since, I don't know, at least the last 3 or 4 games, truthfully, you could argue all 6 games, we've made a better effort to get the ball downfield. Now, we haven't had much success, but we tried. And that's a step in the right pass, of course, unless you attempt it. So our percentages are not great, but as we've discussed before, you can throw a short pass incomplete also. So what we used to always look at would be yards per attempt. You expect your completion percentage to be lower on deeper throws, but hopefully it's offset by a lot of chunk plays too. That's the whole idea, of course, is to get rewarded for the balls that are thrown further down the field.
And I was trying to think of the second. What was Corey's second question? Those 2 parts.
Well, I guess he wanted me to confirm. He thought that Deacon played really well. I wouldn't go that far, simply because there's too many incompletions.
I don't think he said Deacon played really well. He was talking about how frustrated he was with the bombs over the heads of the receivers. Which
Right.
do you attribute that to jitters? I mean, I know that was kind of the overall consensus, and I know even Kirk made a comment to NBC after the game that he actually was quoted as saying, I see the comment here from Sked. He said, "I don't know anything about quarterbacks, but," and then he made a comment about it, which I thought was funny. But have you found that to be true, that typically when a guy is throwing high and hot, that it's due to nerves and being a little jumpy? Because he was throwing, we're talking about high and hot. He was throwing higher and hotter than we've seen from anybody.
Yeah, there was one or two of those high balls were tied into pressure being right up in his face too. I remember one particular where, for sure, it had something to do with the high throw. In the second half, for sure, maybe in the fourth quarter. Let's see, he was driving to the north, so it must have been third quarter, right? Because we were driving to the south in the fourth.
Yeah,
is that right?
And if
it was a third.
Corey, you're still in the queue on StreamYard. If I missed if we got your second half of that question wrong, please send me a direct message here on StreamYard, and I'll get that second question up for Coach Patterson. But I do appreciate the call. And there was a comment here from Ari Gold. Did Weegan transfer? No, Weegan was out there. He was on kick return duties. He's not being used much on offense right now. I don't know why. They kind of used him early against Utah State. They tried to run some stuff for Caden, but he's been kind of non-existent since then offensively. Alexander wants to know, were there any fire Brian chants today?
I didn't hear him, but of course I didn't hear him a week ago either.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. You didn't hear him a week. They were there a week ago, and we talked about that. But Don, can I ask you a question about Marco Linez?
Sure.
He is. Tell me, for who knows nothing about coaching and nothing really about quarterback play. Marco is now, and I know Cade's hurt, but Marco is now wearing a green hat and participating in signal calling. Is that an indication of anything?
I'm sorry.
I've got allergies. It's a bad time with the harvest and everything. A bad time for allergies.
I think all that fresh air has got me a little messed up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question to you, Don, is with Marco now wearing a green hat and being part of signal calling on the sideline, is that an indication of anything to you?
Well, he's got a little more responsibility than what he had. I would say if you're not wearing a green cap and you're not involved with signals, you're even further down the pecking order. You might have noticed Bohosky on the sideline had a clipboard. He did not have a cap. He was not involved with the signaling.
Okay, I'm just curious if that's would you say that's an indication of above average progression for a true freshman, or would you say that's, our true freshmen should be capable of calling out signals midway through their freshman year?
I wouldn't read anything into it. I think logically you need a bit of two signalers anyway. One's live, one's dummy. I think Marco's certainly doing okay. He looks like he's engaged. But the disappointment I've had, of course, with those preseason games out of the way, those non-conference games this week, he didn't have a chance to get his feet wet in an actual game. That's unfortunate because he's probably going to be redshirted this year anyway. It would have been nice to see him in a game or two, and we probably won't have that chance going forward.
Question here from John. How about that tackle screen? Don, can you I want your listen, hold on. Don't sugarcoat this. All right? Not that you sugarcoat things, but I want you to be dead honest. What did you think of the call on the screen apparently to Iowa's left? Who was
that first and goal, I think? First and goal at the 2 or 4, I can't remember.
Great question. I don't know. In fact, what's weird is, shouldn't he be, well, it was a backward throw. So it wasn't technically a throw, but that's why it's not on the stat sheet as a target. But
correct.
The reason I bring that up is we just heard from Tom Kakert that Mason Richmond was injured and in pain.
So why would you want him to? He was the intended receiver, right? He was in the game.
What it looked like on television screen. And let me just say this. I know what people are going to say. Corey, you'll complain about everything and anything. You want ingenuity, and then Brian gives you ingenuity, and you complain about it. That's all right. You can say that if you want. I thought it was a very odd call. That's not the way I want Iowa being innovative, but that's just me.
The reason I have a smile on my face, I got to take you back to 1999, my first year at Western Illinois, and we ran 52 throwback, tackle, screen, same play. And you'll laugh because we ran it against poor old Drake. We beat him badly anyway, but this was early in the game. And that particular play was batted down with the pass rush. It was batted down. Of course, it had to be a lateral. And after the game, Rob Asher asked me, he said, "Tell me what you were trying to do on that play." And I said, "We were lateraling the ball to our tackle. That's what we were doing." In our defense, we did have a guy playing left tackle that ended up being a starter for the world champion New York Giants. His name was Richie Soybert, and he was an athlete. And we were throwing it to him, but the ball got batted down, and it wasn't even obvious what we were trying to do at that point. Same play, same result too. So maybe that's a good reason not to run it.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my question again, Don.
Did I like the call? No, I didn't.
Okay.
Simply because we were either on the 2 or the 4. We had plenty of downs to work with. let's not get cute. Let's just mash them and get our score.
I'm just curious, and again, it's a backwards pass. If Richmond drops that ball, it's a loose ball.
Absolutely. It might end up being picked up and advanced 95 yards.
Just an odd call. Anyways, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey.
Lomansky, how are you, sir?
Good. I'll make this quick because you got Michael Hogg, a Purdue fan that wants on the show, and I believe Marco Nez's grandmother's in the chat. Doesn't Marco wear number 11?
Yes, Marco Lanez's grandmother's in the chat. Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah, because we look forward to Marco. I've heard you interview him, and he'll get a chance. He's probably the best candidate quarterback we've had in several years. And Don maybe Don should talk about Marco a little bit, and you should talk a little bit of Marco for his grandmother's benefit.
Sounds good to me, Don. Everybody knows I'm really high on Marco Lainez. Not only how he carries himself on the football field, he's kind of modeled his game after a guy that Iowa fans are familiar with, Brad Banks. I don't know that he's got the physical athleticism per se like Brad did. There's not many guys who can beat Brad Banks, but he is mobile and he is a really strong leader and a great kid. And I'm looking forward to seeing him get an opportunity, Don.
Marco would get back in the 80s or the 90s for two reasons. Well, more than two, really. But fundamentally, we always look for what we used to call a combination quarterback. That's a guy that can extend plays. That's a guy that can improvise and make good things out of not much. Incidentally, Hudson Card's that kind of quarterback. Now, he had problems today, but I got to give him credit. There were times when he was almost Houdini-like to get out of some of the situations he was in. And wasn't that a crazy play? I'm still convinced. I'd be curious, Corey, what the TV people said. The crazy ball that got advanced by Card late in the play after the fumble, it looked to me like his knee was on the ground when he possessed the ball. What did the replay show?
Knee wasn't
was a good call.
Absolutely. Knee wasn't even close.
Wait a minute. I know the knee was close because I saw it on the big screen, but I didn't know what was said. It was a shot from behind the ball.
Are we talking about the play in the first quarter?
No. I'm talking about one in the latter half, the second half. Remember the ball that got booted? It was on the ground, and it got kicked back, and somebody picked it up and advanced it for a first down.
Okay, maybe I was in the bathroom.
They were driving north. It must have been fourth quarter, right? Because they were driving north in the – or were they?
I think I missed that play. I must have been in the bathroom at that time because I really missed that play.
Well, I was going to say that was the play of the day, but no, I think I'd give the winning touchdown as the play of the day. Incidentally, that was another good call by Brian. Why? Because it violated a tendency. Third down and short, Purdue did not expect us to go play action. And it wasn't just play action to make a first down. It was play action to make a touchdown, and it worked. And thankfully it did because 20-7 seemed pretty safe until they scored that second touchdown.
Lomansky?
Yeah, I got a question you both can answer. And, of course, I watched Don make play calls and contribute to the Iowa offense and even his other head coaching duties. You talked about tendencies, violating tendencies.
Right.
The game should have ended 20-7, in my opinion. And we left the door open for a miracle win for Purdue, and we didn't have to. You run the ball into the line. When you have two immobile quarterbacks, QB1 and QB2, on a critical point in the game, and hope to God, Don, they're thinking like you, and they've got something in their back pockets for Wisconsin that they don't want to show, because, that's our big game. Let's hope it's in their back pockets. Why we don't have some kind of athlete to get a first down to prevent Purdue getting the ball back on some kind of imaginative play instead of being Bo and Woody in 3 yards of the cloud of dust. You've got a lot of callers, and I'm going to get off, but I want both your reactions to why in the world we can be innovative and violate a tendency with QB1's out, QB2's immobile. I'm really frustrated that we left the door open, Don, for a miracle play by Purdue. And our defense, you talked about people getting tired, Don. Our defense have been out there the whole game, and we run it 4 times in the line. We got a first down to win the game. Hayden and Don would never do that to the Iowa program. I'll hang up and listen to your comments.
Thank you, Lemansky. So a couple things. I will give Brian Ferentz credit for this. The tendency thing is absolutely valid. There were a couple of plays in this game that I would say were violations of tendency. I know there was an Iowa beat writer that did an article, kind of a deep dive into these tendencies when I was in shotgun, when I was under center, what they tend to run. One of my biggest pet peeves with play calling right now is going empty. Seems like we just love going empty. And I haven't had a mobile quarterback back there since C.J. Beathard. And yet this fascination with putting a statue back there all by himself, I understand spreading things out and trying to take advantage of them through the air, but you're not fooling anybody. And I know apparently that's not a concern of Iowa's to fool people offensively, but there were some tendencies broken today. The 3rd and 2 throw for a touchdown to Eric All was, I think, a good example of that. But Don, what are your thoughts on Lemansky's estimation about tendencies offensively?
Well, that was the single best call of the day because it produced the winning touchdown. And I understand where he's coming from. And getting back to those formation tendencies that were written about during the week, one thing we I'm sure do, we scout ourselves, and it's really important that you do that because you have to know what the defense knows. And obviously, you can, if you want to try to set up a team 3 or 4 weeks in advance, maybe you can run the ball in 3rd and short, knowing when we get around to playing this opponent, we're going to go play action and try to hit something big. And our tendencies are going to be really heavy for run. That's all well and good. But in general, if you're in direct, what we call direct, if you're underneath the center, if your run percentage is 70% there, then in God's name, wouldn't you come up with some more play action when you're underneath the center? Because the defense knows the same thing you know. If you run the ball 7 out of 10 times, and then let's go one step further. What if you're underneath the center and it's 3rd and short? Or for that matter, it's 1st down. Maybe if you're underneath the center and it's 1st down, that run percentage is also 85 or 90%. Perfect time to go play action. My point is, if you're not throwing the ball as much when you're underneath, then you need to incorporate more passes. And it doesn't all have to be 50-50, of course, but you sure as hell wouldn't want it to be 90-10 or 80-20 even. Ideally, in the other extreme, if you're in gun, and gun always means pass, let's say it means pass 75% of the time, then I would make an effort to run the ball more out of gun. So they don't have to be 50-50, but if they're closer than 80-20, closer than 70-30, that's a good thing because obviously there's a little more uncertainty on the part of the defense as to whether it's run or pass.
Good answer, Don. And I don't disagree with the caller earlier who said that, I'm happy about the play calling these last 2 weeks. Here's one thing I do have a problem with, and I brought this up at the outset of the show, Don, and I'd like to get your perspective on it. We've talked about it before, but I promised someone that reached out to me during the game that I would ask you this question because I know where they stand on the question. I know where I stand on the question. 2-part question, Don. A, are wide receiver, tight end, running back drops, all right, pass drops, are drops a part of execution? Yes or no? Is that a part of lack of
define execution. Is execution simply the playing of the game?
Well, that's
the part of the game, yeah.
You consider that to be a failure of execution.
A certain percentage of the drops are absolutely a failure of execution, yes.
Okay, so what would be an example of drops not being an example of execution?
A ball that was tipped by a defender, maybe. It curved off one hand and it went to the receiver, but he only had a split second to catch it. You could argue that's not a drop,
but a real drop comes back to execution, correct?
Yeah, in general it does, yes.
Okay. So my question to you is, who do you blame for drops? Because drops have been an issue these past 2 weeks. Who takes the blame for drops? I know what you're going to say, but who takes the blame for drops?
Well, I know what Coach Fry would say. He would say, I don't blame the receiver, I blame the coach. That's what he would say. He always put the blame on us. And it had a good effect because the players thinking, now wait a minute, I'm the one that dropped the pass. Coach Patterson didn't drop it. And Coach Patterson's a good guy, so I don't want him to suffer. So I'm going to find a way to eliminate these drops. Now, here's one thing that we used to do, and to my knowledge, they haven't done it in years, but we did it all the time. I give Hayden credit for this. Every coach has a manager. And during a practice, every last ball was charted. In other words, at the end of every practice, I would know, and of course, over a 2.5 hour practice, there'd be a lot of balls thrown, and you'd have a lot of chances to catch or drop a pass. So we knew that one receiver was catching at 94%, the other receiver was only catching at 88%. And you always heard me say, Corey, that's a big difference because we don't judge them by the ones they catch. We judge them by the ones they drop. So if you're dropping only 6% of the time and I'm dropping 12% of the time, I used to tell my receivers, Corey's twice the receiver I am because he only drops half as many. I'm dropping twice as many. He's twice the receiver that I am. And the emphasis for that is for a reason. One drop pass could be the difference in the game. So the bottom line, if it's a drop on an individual basis, the receiver has to own that drop. I will admit a quarterback can contribute to it. A ball that's thrown a little off target. Imagine a slant route that's thrown behind the receiver. That's a tough catch. But even if it's a tough catch, you heard me say the other day, Corey, if a guy sells up for the ball, imagine a go route, he leaves his feet, he dives for all he's worth, and it skips off his fingers. That's not a drop. But anything short of that's a drop. And the simple explanation, if you can touch it, you can catch it. That's what we used to say. And we had some receivers that were awfully, awfully reliable, primarily because they were born with good hand-eye coordination, I'll admit that. But they also had the mindset, I'm going to play all day without a drop. That's my goal. I'm not going to take anything for granted. Maybe when I'm a freshman, I have a couple of drops simply because I didn't look the ball in. Well, I'm sitting there thinking I'm a bonehead for failing to look the ball in because it's simply lack of discipline. So from that point forward, I'm going to be sure I look the ball in, and then I'll worry about what I'm going to do after the catch. But I'm not going to make any assumptions about a catch. I'm never going to take it for granted. I'm going to look the ball in every time. Does that help?
It does. And just to kind of piggyback off that answer, Don, if you have multiple receivers failing to execute, specifically with drops, doesn't that come back to, well, if this guy's having problems with it, this guy's having problems with it, this guy's having problems with it, maybe it's the tree, not the apple? Like maybe we're not coaching these guys well enough?
Well, one good point to bring up, what type of passes are they having difficulty with? Here's a radical thought. Let's set up a drill so that we can rapid fire, give them reps on those kind of throws. And obviously repetitions do a lot, as long as they're good repetitions, as long as you're doing the right things. People do things the wrong way sometimes with their hands. There are certain passes where they're thrown. A receiver might try to make a catch with his thumbs in over here. And the only problem with that is you might notice my forearm here is restricting my vision toward the ball. Well, wouldn't it be easier maybe to have thumbs out, my hands in this position, and now I have a better chance to look the ball in? So stuff like that, thumbs in versus thumbs out, and it just comes with experience. But as you progress through the program, you're very unlikely to have your hands in the wrong position for a certain catch. So it gets back to coaching again. It gets back to eliminating technical errors. That's another simple example on the curl route. Well, if you're running a curl route and you're squared up to the ball's coming at you. Obviously, your thumbs are in, right, for that catch. They have to be. But what you got to do is understand, I got to be sure not to stab at the ball. An inexperienced receiver will extend for the ball. We want you to extend for the ball, but the trick is to be able to cushion the ball on contact. You actually give a little bit with your hands. To me, it's kind of like throwing a ball into a net, right? It's going to be caught in the net as long as the hands cushion, then you're less likely to drop the ball. You don't want to be stiff with your hands on contact. You know, you want to cushion the ball. So if that's a problem, well, you throw the guy a thousand curl routes, and he understands what you're saying after a while about being able to cushion a pass. Does that make sense?
Yes.
A little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And my whole point, my take on this whole situation, and obviously you understand the physics of making a catch and fixing those issues on an individual basis. My issue is when people say, well, it's not Brian Ferentz's fault that this guy can't catch, or it's not Kelton Copeland's fault this guy can't catch. They're coaching these guys. They're developing these guys. They're recruiting these guys. So we're just going to blame all the individuals and not look at, oh, you've got execution issues all over the place, not just with drops, but with blocking and with route trees and with all these things and with quarterback play. And you can't hit the broadside of a barn in the pocket. Like, doesn't that all come back to we have an issue and it's bigger than just individuals, especially when these problems are stretching beyond one game, 1 month, 1 year, 1 season, one group of players? Like, what's the common denominator with all these things?
Well, if you have an issue with execution, Hayden Fry would say that's a problem with your coach. That's what he would say. Because the players, of course, function as their coach to do so. So if you correct mistakes, then obviously you're enabling them to play better and to eliminate mistakes. And if you're not getting that done, then it's an issue of coaching. And at some point, Hayden would say, if it persists, then I got to find another coach.
By the
That's
way,
just the way.
There's a guy at Colorado who's fairly successful named Travis Hunter who plays on both sides of the ball, Don.
I'm aware of that.
Okay. I'm just, I know you are. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Michael is here. Michael, welcome. Michael, welcome. Michael, welcome. How many times do I got to say it? Michael, you're muted, Michael. We get you unmuted? No. Michael.
Is Michael the umpire or the catcher? I was wondering.
It's a great question. Michael, when you're back, please throw me a private chat and we'll get you on the air. I want to give a shout out to our RTI Threads player of the game. How about Logan Lee? Don, I could have went a lot of different directions. Obviously, Caleb Johnson's numbers were impressive. Sean Williams was impressive in the backfield. Eric All made some really impressive plays. He probably had the best catch of the game down near the goal line in this one. And then, of course, Cooper DeJean had another solid, strong performance, nearly had another pick six. But ultimately, going with a guy in Logan Lee who had 10 tackles, 2.5 for a loss, 2 sacks. And this game kind of comes on the heels of what I thought was a really impressive performance from Y.A. Black a week ago. So Iowa's interior guys in that defensive line stepping up right now, Don.
I think you're right. You know, we ended up with 6 sacks today, but there were any number of other hurries in there too. So it's safe to say that.
Tom brought up the sacks, and I'm not taking anything away from the defensive line. Like I said, Logan Lee played tremendous, and that's why he's our RTI Threads player of the game. But one thing that I think should be mentioned, and you mentioned it, you kind of alluded to it earlier, is a lot of that pressure that we saw in the first half was a result of strong coverage. And
very true.
Johnson Card started out with a lot of time on some of those throws and did make some questionable decisions, but bought himself a lot of time. And that tells me that the Iowa DBs were doing their job on the back end.
You know, I couldn't help but notice this is the way it was perceived by me, Corey, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's now 20-7, and then Purdue gets the ball and drives down the field. And I don't know how long it took, but it didn't take very long. They went in the end zone in how much time? Maybe a couple of minutes at the most, it seemed. But here's my recall. I believe on that drive, we were a lot of what you might call base defense, a lot of zone coverage. But here's my point. when it became 20-14 and we had to go back on the field and play defense, you remember what happened then? Phil Parker said, we're going to pressure the quarterback. We brought 5, we brought 6. We heated the guy up, and it had good effect. And so let's give Phil Parker credit for realizing the game's on the line, right? It's a one-score game. And he said, we're not going to sit back and get picked apart like we did on that last possession. We're going to pressure them. We're going to dictate to them.
Don, wasn't this game in many ways reminiscent of the Iowa State game?
Some similarities, yes.
Well, let me give you a few. Jazz Patterson knocks off the huge run that kind of skewed the rushing numbers in that one. Not to this extent, but, you know, he had like a 60-yard run or 70-yard run.
Correct.
We'll try to get Don back. It looks like Don's signal is going in and out. Let's see if we can get Don back. Don? Are you with us?
Yes.
But I was just saying, the Iowa State game, you had the Jazz Patterson run of, 75 yards. Today you had the 67-yard run for Caleb Johnson. And both those games were in the midway through the fourth quarter, and Iowa had a 20-7 lead. In both of those games, they give up a late touchdown, have a chance with the offense to put the game away. They do not. Comes back to the defense. And in both cases, both games, the defense allows no ground, and they win 20-14. Very similar. I mean, just played out very similar.
You're right. You know, the good thing about that, of course, our defense is gaining confidence with how they can play late in the game when the game's on the line. Because let's face it, if you're on the field and you're up only one score, then you realize we've got to come through here. And in both cases, we not just came through, but we came through in a resounding manner. Correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, neither team made a first down. Is that right? Did Purdue make a first down today on that last opportunity?
No.
I didn't think so.
No.
And I know for a fact that Iowa State did not. That was 4 snaps and we're done.
Correct. Yeah, so I think to your point, when Iowa needs to buckle down, I mean, and they do that, that's the interesting thing about this Phil Parker defense is they do allow ground. And when it was 20-7, I'm sitting there thinking, here we go again. They're going the length of the field, and they're getting Iowa for chunks, 4 or 5 yards, clock's moving.
It looked way too easy, didn't it?
I know, but it worked out. And I'm not saying Phil wants to give up that late touchdown, but again, clock's moving. And now, like I said, Don, I think one of the big beneficiaries of this new rule about not stopping the clock for first downs is a guy like Phil Parker playing with a lead, coaching with a lead. I think he's one of the big beneficiaries in this whole rule change. And one of the big, I should say that the unit for most of college football, or the group of people that are going to be suffering the most from this new change, is people trying to run and put together 2-minute offense. And we saw that obviously Purdue had plenty of time. Iowa just in that last drive found a way. They had 2 minutes to go, Don. On that last drive, they had 2 minutes to work with the ball.
Yeah, and 2 minutes, when you look at 2-minute offense, that's a lot of time.
Absolutely. Not as much time with the new rule change, but still you can work the boundary, and 2 minutes is a lot of time. So again, RTI Threads player of the game, Logan Lee, who's been instrumental, and I'm sure was instrumental in that defensive line meeting, along with Joe Evans that Tom Kaker brought up earlier. And Don, you see I've got the Cooper DeJean gear on today. This is the CD3 Cooper DeJean gear. So people, if people want to buy their Cooper DeJean merchandise, they can check out the link in our description for RTI Threads. Let's go back to Michael, and then we're going to take a quick break. We've got OS for Hawks, Tony, and we've got somebody on our phone line as well. Let's go back to Michael before our break. Michael, welcome back to our Iowa Steakhouse call-in line.
Hey, Coach, how you doing today? Hey, Corey.
Doing good,
in case you're wondering, I'm the umpire, Don.
You're the umpire? Good for you.
Hey, Corey, I got to eat my crow because I remember telling you Mark Stream this week Purdue is going to beat Iowa, but I'm eating my crow right now.
Okay, good.
But hey, one thing I'm trying to figure out, Purdue was having success running the ball outside. I wonder why Graham Harrell didn't go more outside. And on the last series for Purdue, why didn't he try to not run or something? Because I knew that they was going to stack the line and force him come in with the blitz and throw the ball, because I would expect him to throw the ball. But I would have tried to run the ball, mix it up and stuff like that.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. They used their last timeouts, punted. Right, they had to use their last timeouts when we were on the field with our offense. So even though there were 2 minutes left, there were no timeouts.
Right.
And how many yards did they have to go? I can't remember.
Oh, they had like what, 65, I think.
I was thinking maybe 70. I couldn't recall, but they had a considerable distance to go. So you're right about one thing. Don't forget about the run game. I used to lecture on 2-minute offense at a lot of clinics, and one of the coaching points was do not forget about the running game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, time you got a lot of real estate to cover, and you don't have much time. You spend too much time with running plays, but there is a place for a running play every now and again. And I don't remember. It seemed like they got behind the chains pretty quick. I think, didn't they? Didn't we get to them on early downs?
I gotta give credit for their defense. Phil had a good job for them today and stuff. But a couple other things. One, I know Cooper pretty much had DeJean Burke shut down and stuff like that. But there was other times I seen it seemed like Rice was open. I mean, yes, he was open or Sheffield, and another time there when the lanes was open when he was looking for a receiver. How come Carr just didn't run himself when there was lanes available?
You know, and maybe you can tell us better than me or even Don, Michael, because you're obviously a Purdue fan. It was the comment was made last week as I was watching the condensed version of that Illinois game. One of the commentators made a comment about how Hudson Card is mobile, but he does not like to run. Is that accurate?
That surprises me because I figured it'd be past first. I mean, he likes to run. I think he's maybe like with the new offense and stuff. Maybe he does throw a little bit better. But no, there were some lanes that I like that and stuff. But it wouldn't have been a moot point though because there was like what 2 or 3 plays in a row they've had holding. They had holding and stuff like that.
Yeah, one surprise. He's such a good runner. It wouldn't have surprised me if they would have used him on a Q draw a time or two.
I agree.
Because he is above average as a runner. I do think that's one reason. A lot of times in long yardage, we'll play what we call 2-man. You know, you're 500 man, you know, all receivers covered by man coverage and 2 safeties in behind. Obviously, that leaves 4 rushers, and that would mean that there's nobody manned up on the quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good time to run Q draw. You know, you flare one or both backs out of the backfield, however many backs you have. And, of course, the linebackers have to cover them. And now the offensive line only has to account for those 4 down guys. So that's a good play to counter 2-man. That's, I think, one reason we didn't play 2-man is we were probably worried about Q draw a little bit because Card is above average as a runner.
But one last thing, because I know I'm probably getting close to the 2-minute mark and stuff like that. When was the last time no Iowa receivers had a catch? Because I was trying to look it up, but I couldn't even find it.
I can't remember ever having a game like that. Probably did, but it was probably really severe weather, you know, maybe a cold and ice or freezing rain or something goofy like that, maybe. A game maybe in late November.
All right.
It's possible.
All right.
But even then, I don't think so. Somebody will probably go to the trouble of researching that. And my guess is it's been a long time since we had a game like that.
Appreciate the call from Michael and appreciate you waiting on hold for as long as you did, Michael. Do appreciate that and always enjoy hearing from a fan of the opponent. So appreciate that. Brian Long in the chat. To beat Wisconsin, Deacon will need to find accuracy this week. Our receivers need some stick-em or it will be similar to 2021. And obviously we don't know what's going to happen. But, Don, that 2021 game kept flashing back in my mind as I'm watching.
That was the winning Camp Randall, right?
It was. And I let me just say this. I know Tom said he didn't watch the Rutgers-Wisconsin game. I did watch a lot of that second half, and I'm going to actually go in a different direction I was actually impressed by Wisconsin. I was impressed by their ability to run the football. They've got not one but 2 really big backs who I don't know if I'd call both of them complete, but certainly Braylon Allen is proven, and his backup, whose name escapes me,
I thought the original backup was injured. Is that right? I can't remember his name.
Right.
So that's a guy that was third. Now he's second team.
And he is big. I think Braylon Allen's like 240. This guy's like 235. Let me pull up his info. If anybody missed the Wisconsin Rutgers game,
I know what concerned me in the preseason. I heard someone on the Big Ten Network comment that offensive line was a real strength for Wisconsin. And I'm thinking, well, on top of that, they got 2 really good backs. So that's a concern.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll say this: they ran. So Braylon Allen had 21 carries for $101 and a long of 18, and Jackson Aker is the backup running
that's a
back.
new name. Yeah, that guy was third, I'm sure.
13 carries for 65 yards. That's a healthy 5 yards per carry and a long of 14. He was good. I mean, I couldn't tell much of a discernible difference between him and Braylon Allen.
And it sounds like it was not all garbage time. He subbed even in the first half.
This game was in doubt toward the end. Rutgers got a late touchdown and had a chance to get the ball back, had an onside kick that, you make a field goal off that, then you have a chance to maybe get another onside kick. I mean, granted, Wisconsin was playing with the lead, but they ran the ball.
I have a question, Corey. What were your impressions of Mordecai?
That's a good question. I wasn't blown away by him. I mean, he was 17 to 31 for $145, 4.7 yard average per attempt. That's pretty.
So a lot of ball control passes, it sounds like.
Yeah, no interceptions, 1 touchdown. Did have, the one thing about Mordecai that we haven't seen much from Wisconsin running backs since Russell Wilson is he can run the football. 11 carries for 50 yards.
Wow.
So, it's going to be a tall task for this defensive line and for Jay Higgins and for Nick Jackson and these guys to contain all these rushing threats. I don't know.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, Don, I don't know if Iowa can run the ball anywhere close to where they ran on Purdue today. The one team this year who has ran the ball well against Wisconsin, do you want to guess who that was?
Washington State.
No, the one team that actually ran the ball well against Wisconsin was Purdue. Purdue actually ran for 194 yards, an average of 6.3 per rush. And our guy, Tyrone Tracy, had 84 yards on 8 carries, along of just 24. And Hudson Card had 13 carries for 54 yards. So if he's hesitant to run the football, he wasn't hesitant against Wisconsin.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
All right, folks, we're going to be right back. We're going to take a quick break. We're recapping Iowa's 20-14 win over the Purdue Boilermakers. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Iowa postgame with Coach Don Patterson.
Imagine the Possibilities is dedicated to empowering people to reach individual achievement across the spectrum of life. We believe in creating lasting relationships, empowering people for success, and cultivating joy. Our team of passionate people work each day to serve our communities in ways that create a lasting impact. We believe in creating opportunities for people with disabilities to achieve goals, build skills, and celebrate all that's possible. If you want to learn more about us or join our exceptional team, visit us at imagineia.org.
We are back here, Iowa postgame with Coach Don Patterson, and we've got several callers who have been waiting patiently on hold. We appreciate everybody for doing that. Let's go back to our call line, our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, and we'll go to OS for Hawks. Welcome.
Corey.
Hey.
Corey and Coach Don, good to see you this evening.
Good to see you.
OS, it's good to see you.
Yeah. One thing quick, Coach Don I think he was talking about a play where Card picked up the ball after there was a fumble. They showed on the replay that Card's knee was actually off the ground when he picked up the ball when he ran for the first down.
It was close to touching though, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, but he actually picked the knee up before he actually picked the ball off the ground. So
gotcha.
Anyway, then I had another question. What is the rule about the re-kick on the kickoff?
I made a comment to the. Go ahead. I made a comment to the city next to. I said, I don't know if I've ever seen that in a game. I have seen a ball blow off the tee, of course, as the kicker runs at the ball, but we always instructed the kicker, if the ball blows off the tee, then you simply abort the kick. And we've seen that, and invariably they'll say, okay, the whistles will blow, we'll start over. Maybe you have someone to hold the ball. But my thought, I assumed, if the ball was in the process of coming off the tee and the kicker chose to hit it, if you touched it, you own it. That's what I thought.
Well, I agree, and the reason I'm asking is because the replay shows if you look very closely, maybe the ball moved a half an inch when he kicked it. I mean, it
Hardly moved at
I
all.
used to kick off in high school, and there were several times when I kicked the ball that was starting to move, but it just went ahead and kicked it.
Yeah,
That's the only
nobody ever gave you a do-over, did they?
no.
I thought the rule was if you kicked it, then you owned it.
Yeah. Well, I think his waving, I don't know what that had to do with it. But I had one other funny one, and I wanted to say it. When they threw the touchdown to All, um, I was watching the game, and my mother's here. But anyway, when the touchdown happened, I was screaming at the TV, "There's your waist down, Corey. There's your waist down, Corey."
Well, all right.
Actually, that's not truly a
I know
waist down.
technically
It's
it
not
wasn't
a
a
waist
waist
down.
down, but I thought you would find it funny.
No. Somebody asked me the question, Don. Allow me to be your what's the word? Your student here, and repeat back what you've taught me. Somebody
I don't
asked
know.
me during the game. Somebody asked me that, Don. Corey,
What's
was
the word you said?
I'm your student here. So they asked me, was that a waist down? And my response was, well, no, I applaud him for the call, but there's no way they were going for it on 4th down. There's no way.
Correct.
Because it was 13-7. You kick a field goal at 16-7. So it was not a waist down.
Or you can go back and quote Brian when he said, I can't ever imagine 3rd and 1 ever being a waist down.
What if 3rd and 1's never a waist down, and 3rd and 2's definitely not. So
yeah,
let's give Brian credit for a good call, but that is not a waist down. No.
Good call, not a waist down. Absolutely.
I just thought you'd find it funny. I also said Logan Lee, I thought, played an outstanding game, and him being your player of the game, I think, is dead on. He played fantastic. And I think that the defensive linemen need to speak with the wide receivers and ask them if they can have a meeting this next week. And maybe that would help out. One other thing that I wanted to bring up, too, is I did notice on Purdue's rushing touchdown late in the game, Evans got held something terrible. And I'm not one of these big guys that harp on missed calls like that, but he literally got bear hugged. There was no way he was going to, set the edge getting bear hugged like that. And my other point, all I had was I thought that the offensive line looked much better today, run blocking. And I know we go on about those stats, but good grief that Caleb's run, the long run, I could have run through that hole. And I'm an old offensive lineman, so the blocking on that play was fantastic. So I did think that the offensive line performed better, and I've talked about the offensive line before, and I have to give them credit when I think that they are playing better than what they have played. And that's all I had tonight, gentlemen.
Thank you for the call, sir. Appreciate it.
I did hear an interview, Corey. I don't know if you heard it with Dolph's interview with Caleb, and I don't know which one of those long runs he was referring to, but one of them, he was talking about the play, and he said it was designed to go a certain gap, and it was all bottom. He simply went elsewhere. So I don't know that the blocking scheme, several times they were so compressed that we made good yardage to the outside. And that particular play, I think we did run up inside, but as I recall, we started right and ended up bending back left, to get loose on the long run. I don't think he was touched on that play, as I recall. So I don't know if it was so much a great blocking scheme as just a good job of running to daylight on the part of Caleb.
There was a lot of daylight there. I mean, how would you quantify the numbers? I mean, you're right. Maybe, if there's a breakdown there defensively, or, Caleb, did a good job finding the gap. There were more gaps and more big runs today than we've seen against a Big Ten foe in quite some time. Without looking at the tape, how would you grade Iowa's rush offense as it relates to blocking?
I would think you'd have to give them a better grade than what they've had. Yes. I think there was improvement. My concern, like you heard me say, is we're still not efficient enough. And by that, I mean consistently gaining 4 yards. Because even though we had 100 yards on 2 plays, 67-33, the other 15 carries were only worth a total of 34 yards. Now, you did bring up that number 4. LeSean had a lot of 4 and 5 and 6 yard plays, so that's good. And maybe it ties into style of running. Maybe he's a little better at making something out of nothing. Maybe he's not quite the home run hitter, but maybe in terms of consistently gaining 4 yards, maybe he's actually superior. Could be.
And hopefully we get Jazz Patterson back relatively soon. Would be nice to see what happens there. Okay, a couple super chats that I'm behind on. First of all, Cyhawk C Money. What is your take on wide receivers not being targeted? Quarterback not seeing them, not open, or taking what the defense gives us? I think that was covered earlier, but Don, I mean, I've asked you this so many times. I feel like a broken record. How do you get this receiver core involved more, especially when they've had some issues with drops?
Well, part of the burden's on them. Let's face it, part of our problem is we're not consistently getting open. Now, what does getting open mean? Well, if it's zone coverage, it means having an awareness of the softest spots in the coverage. And you need to route adjust to be able to put yourself in those positions. Versus man coverage, you got to find ways to separate from that man defender. So the burden in both cases is on the receiver. The quarterback, obviously, is going to think long and hard about putting the ball your way if you're not open. So the guys that get targeted the most, in general, you could say, are the guys that are more capable of getting open. We're not going to throw you the ball if you're well covered. That only makes sense.
LaShawn Williams was wide open down in the red zone on a pass that DeJean forced into the end zone. Don, you'll see it as you watch the tape back. I mean, there's nobody on LaShawn Williams' side of the field, and it was a walk-in touchdown, and DeJean forced it into the end zone. Iowa settled for a field goal. This was
That's
his
the
first.
ball that went into traffic, wasn't it? It was like it didn't end up with Purdue.
Thank you for the super chat, Cyhawk C Money. Appreciate that. And Brian, he says, to beat Wisconsin, DeJean will need to find accuracy this week on our receivers. Need some stick 'em, or it'll be similar to 2021. I think I've read that already, but yeah, absolutely. The receivers just got to get more involved. I don't believe you can win. I don't think this team is designed to win at Wisconsin, given how Wisconsin runs the football and how they're typically, now this is a different Wisconsin program as a whole, how they typically stop the run if you can't get the receivers involved. If you can't stretch the field vertically in some fashion, I think it's going to be a long day up there. And I think you're going to be playing from behind. And here's one team you don't want to be playing from behind against. Who's Wisconsin.
Right, because they can certainly shorten the game on you.
Absolutely. And MC, thank you for the super chat, MC. Hey, guys, thank you for doing the show. I look forward to it every Saturday. Thank you for that. I know that means a lot to me, and it means a lot to Don. Scott says third quarter, DeJean had 2 very long passes back to the 10-yard line, but the drive died when LaShawn was wide open on the rail route. There's the mention that I just threw in there, Don. DeJean looks straight ahead, incomplete. How to fix? You see those on tape, Don. How do you approach that for a guy who was starting his first ever game?
Well, what helps? You've heard me talk before, Corey, about pre-snap reads. Remember that? Here's an example I give you. It's a baseball example again. Corey, you're playing shortstop. There's a man on first. There's one out. Before the ball's ever pitched, you're playing shortstop now, right? You have to process what might happen. And I'm talking about a ball that's put in play toward you. There's really only one thing to consider. If the ball's hit firmly to you, and there's also a man on first and third, one out. Ball's hit firmly to you, you're going to try to turn 2. That's what you do, right? Because that eliminates the run. Inning over. What if a ball's hit softly? Now what are you going to do, Corey?
First of all, you're putting a non-baseball guy on the spot, but let me try. First, you're going to go home.
Absolutely. Right? You can't turn 2. Why even try? You don't want to force the guy at second because the run's going to score. Ball softly hit, you charge it, and you throw home. So here's my point. You've thought that through before the ball's ever even thrown to the hitter.
Right.
Same way for a quarterback. You gotta assess before you take the ball. A lot of inexperienced quarterbacks, they don't do that. You watch the guys on Sunday. You can look inside their helmet and you know those wheels are turning because they're making a lot of good judgments about how this play is likely to unfold, and they haven't even called for the ball yet. That's what great quarterbacks do. So obviously that would help us if we can process mentally what's likely to happen before we ever call for the ball. That'll speed up the process of receiver selection and give us a better chance.
Great answer, Don, and appreciate the super chat here from Scott. Great question. How concerned are you overall with Deacon Hill's performance today? Is it just one of those things where you got to see more than one game, one starting game for Deacon before you conclude that? I mean, because the numbers were bad. The numbers were just bad, Don. There's really no way around that.
Right.
A nice touchdown pass to Eric All, but overall, we talked about his numbers earlier. He was 6 of 21.
Yeah. Tell me this stat. I think were we +1 on turnovers or were we even?
Great question. Iowa was. They were +1.
We were +1.
Yep. Iowa was +1. 2 interceptions.
Yeah, you heard me say the other day, I don't think we can win this game if we don't win on turnovers. Well, we won and
1 on turnovers. 1 by 1 score, 1 on turnovers by one. So
yeah.
All right, folks, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Kevin is on hold. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys, what's up?
How are you, man?
Kevin, how are you?
Great. Corey and Don, I've been watching your show since a year ago, and I've been a Hawkeye fan since Ricky Stanzi been QB for Iowa, which is a while ago. But I'm just ever since then, and I say my favorite year would be 2015 when Iowa went to the Big Ten championship 12-0, but then after that, they just went downhill, and it just today was kind of frustrating because it was 3-0, then it was 7-0, then it was 10-0, and then it just I even got frustrated with the Penn State game, but I think Brian needs to go because it's just frustrating.
You're not the only one that feels that way, Kevin.
No, yeah, definitely. No. But
there's reason to be frustrated. I mean, despite the positivity with the run game today, Don, I don't think either you or me are making the claim that somehow this offense is fixed and there's not reason for concern. No. This is not a great Purdue team. This is a Purdue, and by the way, this is a Purdue defense that ranks. And I know people are going to say I'm a hater. I mean, I can give you the stats heading into this game, Don. This Purdue defense ranked in the bottom 5 of the Big Ten in rush defense. So, I mean, bottom 5.
Right.
Good performance by Iowa, but doesn't prove to me that the run game is fixed. And certainly we need to see better quarterback play from Deacon against Wisconsin.
Well, let's face it. I remember a year ago, Corey, Caleb, if I'm not mistaken, had 200 yards against Purdue. I made the comment after the game. I said they had some reluctant participants out there. They had some guys that looked like they didn't really want to be out there.
Now,
That's unusual when you say that about a Big Ten player.
I did not feel that was the case today with Purdue's defense.
No, I didn't either. But my point is there are other times when Caleb himself has gashed Purdue. So in that regard, it resembled a year ago. A couple of big plays. How often do we run the ball for 67 yards? Not very often on one play, not to mention 33. So Purdue obviously got caught out of position there. And how do you run 67 yards and not get touched? Usually if you do that, you got to break a tackle or two. Well, I don't believe he got touched on that play. Poor angles, poor recognition. You heard me talk about leverage on the ball. Obviously, Purdue lost leverage on the football. So they have issues on defense. That's not a great defense. That's true. They're not going to finish in the top half probably, unless they get some things corrected they want. But at least we took advantage of the opportunities that we had. I say that, and this is a little bit of a concern. When's the last time you had to fret about 2 field goal attempts, neither one of which went through? One's blocked and one's missed. It's unfortunate. We got so much confidence in Drew. It's almost as if it never occurs to us that it might not be automatic.
Well, it occurred to me, Don, and I can give you the stats. I read it earlier before you jumped on, and I think I shared these stats with you off the air. After today, and this is I factored in the last couple of games. You and I had a conversation about it a few weeks ago.
It's one particular range, isn't it? In the 40s?
Yeah, after today, according to a pretty good source on Drew's high school numbers, not counting field goal blocks, Drew, for his high school career from sophomore year on to now, throughout his college career, he's 2 of 9 on field goal attempts from 40 to 45 yards. 2 of 9. And he is 100%, not counting blocks, 100% on kicks 46 or more or less than 40.
And how many kicks would that be since he's a sophomore?
I don't have that number, but I mean, you can imagine that it's
more than a couple. It's more than a couple. We know that. And
absolutely. So that's a weird stat. 2 of 9 between 40 and 45, but that's something Drew's got to address, because if he wants to kick in the next level, that's going to be a problem with NFL scouts.
And no short misses either. No short misses and no extremely long misses.
Right.
They're all in that little narrow band of 40 to 45. Hard to understand, hard to comprehend.
Kevin?
But as we always like to say, the numbers don't lie.
Yep. But anyways, I'm just hoping next week that, if Iowa wins 3-0 or whatnot, or like 10-3, I'll be fine with that, because it's a win. But they gotta figure something out coming next year, because Oregon's coming to the Big Ten, UCLA's coming to the Big Ten, and now they're making a 12-team playoff or something like that. So things are changing. So
things are changing, Kevin, and yeah, I mean that's more of a macro discussion we can have in the offseason, but the approach that Iowa takes to winning a lot of these games may have to change as we progress through the years and into a new look conference.
Well, anyways, guys, thanks for taking my call, and I'm gonna keep watching. I just wanted to call on and chat with you guys. So go Hawks.
You, appreciate it, sir. Go Hawks. Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin, for calling in. And I saw a couple more comments here in the chat that we should get to. So apparently this is Marco Lainez's grandmother. She says, cannot wait to see grandson number 11, Marco Lainez, given the opportunity to help the offense. And I think he will do wonders for the offense. And I agree. Well, I don't know when that opportunity will come. We do know that Cade McNamara has indicated that he is planning on returning for next year. But hopefully Marco's pushing every day, Don, and we'll see what happens with Joe Labus. We'll see what happens with Deacon Hill. But is it fair to say there's no reason why, and maybe some Iowa fans will laugh at this notion, there's no reason why Marco shouldn't be pushing for the job next year?
Well, you've heard me say before, Corey, Hayden's mindset, and we made sure that the players understood this. Let's imagine 2 guys in competition for the job. One's a younger player and one's an older player. We explained to the older player, listen, you need to be better than your competition because he's 2 years younger than you. If you're not better than he is, then why would we play you? Because he's got more time to improve than you do. There's a limit to how much better you're going to get because you're running out of time. So the burden's on you to actually be demonstrated that you're better than your competition that's younger. If it's a coin toss, we'd be kind of crazy not to go with the younger player. That's our mentality back in the old days. I don't know for sure that Kirk subscribes to that, but I think it does make good sense that if one player is younger than the other and it's a coin toss, why wouldn't you go with the younger guy that has more time to get better?
I don't think Kirk subscribes to that notion at all, Don.
Well, he and Hayden differ in that then, because that's what Coach Fry used to say.
And I'm not insulting Kirk at all. I'm just his from what I can say based on what I've seen. I think you would probably agree with that, right, Don? Kirk doesn't seem to. Yeah, he doesn't seem to go.
It seems like we favor the older, experienced player.
Absolutely. West Coast Gaming, love the show. Thank you, West Coast Gaming. Appreciate you being here. And same for Breehawk65. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach John Patterson. Who's on the line?
Hey Corey, John, it's Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
How you guys doing?
Doing good, Kyle. We're 2.5 hours in. I'm 2.5 hours
We're doing
in.
better now that you called up, Kyle.
All right. Well, I was at the game today, and there were a few Bryant chants that would have joined them, but there's really no point of doing because I know Kirk's not going to fire Bryant.
So you're saying there were fire Brian chants, and that's what Dino in the chat says as well. So I just was curious. I don't like that necessarily because I don't think it does anything, and if anything, it's just negative energy for the players. But and Don, I'm assuming you would agree with that. It's just negative energy that the players shouldn't have to deal with.
And I've noticed your little man up here too, wherever he is. Yeah.
21.8. We're going down, Don. Going down.
We're all red this time, huh?
Yeah. Anyway, like in the third quarter, I was on the south end zone. I didn't really know we actually ran the tackle screen on first and goal. I really thought that was a tight end screen like I've seen in the past, but that was just mind blowing that we ran that play.
It does defy logic.
I would like to. I believe the first down and goal play, wasn't it? Was it first down or second down?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know if I can even find that in the play-by-play because what would that be quantified in the play-by-play, Don?
It probably simply says just. It probably might even refer. Well, if it's not recorded as a pass, it should say. Well, think about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Corey. The ball was actually batted down in the line of scrimmage. What happened on that play? Because it should have been a line ball, of course, if it was being thrown backwards.
No, actually, I think I misspoke. I don't think it was thrown backwards. I think we'd have to go back. It must not have been thrown backwards because you're right. It got knocked down.
Yeah, so it must have been deemed to be slightly forward.
Yeah, which is smart, by the way. I give the Bryan offense or the Iowa offense a check mark for that because throwing a backwards pass to an injured Mason Richmond in the red zone would not have been a good idea.
Okay, so if it's not a good idea to throw it, it must not have been a good idea to call it then.
Well,
is that what you're saying?
That's how I feel. Kyle, what do you think?
I just didn't really expect that play to the tackle, and I didn't know I don't know if Mason was actually hurt before the game. I didn't really. I read it was questionable, but I didn't know. Like, do you know what his diagnosis was?
I have no idea what the injury was to Mason Richmond, but Tom Kakert was in here earlier this evening and said that Mason was playing through pain, and he was, of course, questionable. He was on the injury report heading into the game, so I don't know what the extent of that injury was, but it must not have been an issue or a concern for re-injury because he was out there the entirety of the game.
Yeah, he's a tough guy, and I want to get to the in the second quarter, after the Cooper interception, second goal went around the free, and we're in shotgun. It just went backwards, and I don't know why would you run shotgun at the 3-yard line with the chance to punch it in. I would have just ran the ball or QB sneak it. I was just, and the fans were like, "Oh,
well, let's ask
again."
Everybody's praising Brian earlier today, and that's great. Again, I agree that maybe the last two games have been more aggressive. That's positive. I was critical of the screen to Mason Richmond. How about this, Don? How about the third and 1 handoff? I believe it was to LaShawn Williams on that final drive that would have ended the game if you get a first down there. At some point, if you're going to say, hey, we want to be able to stand there and run down your throats, even if you know we're going to run, why not just get up there with Deacon and run a QB sneak? Is that not the time to do it?
Well, we ran one last week, right?
Yeah.
With Deacon. So it's not as if that's a heavy tendency for us with Deacon in the lineup. I don't even like the way that football's evolved nowadays. You've got all these silly plays that are 3rd and inches, 4th and inches, where it looks like a rugby scrum or something. Guys are all just in in a massive humanity. It would not surprise me if college football says no more. You're not allowed to push the quarterback forward with players behind. To me, that would be a good rule change because I think it's one of the most boring plays in football is that rugby scrum where everybody's trying to push the quarterback for a first down. So, but anyway, the rule is what it is. Based on all that, it's kind of hard to imagine that he wouldn't be able to make the first down, right? Because we give our center credit for being above average. Well, if we got people behind that are pushing, not to mention Deacon's a big guy, kind of hard to imagine we wouldn't get the necessary foot that we need.
Mm-hmm. And the last thing I want to say is receivers really got to get involved. You know, I know Steph almost should have caught that one and there was that interception, but I was mind blown that they never even got one catch there. It was like, could at least just get one catch and we'll be fine, but got to catch the ball and get the receivers involved.
Absolutely, Kyle. I agree.
And that's all I got for today. Thank you for taking my call, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks, Kyle. Thank you, sir. I love these people in the chat, Don, that people can question me all they want, but when they make comments like, well, actually, this is more of a rip on me, but Steve says either you've got good hands or you don't. Coach P, you're going off the deep end on the whole technique thing. Stop patronizing us, Don. Either you've got good hands or you don't. Don't give us this technique crap.
Steve, just for the record, I coached college football for 37 years, so I believe I'm more of an expert than you are.
Just for the record, Don does not normally pull that one out. He's a very humble co-host here, so I couldn't agree more. Now, Eric did say, he says, so I think Eric is on the side of the fans that would make the claim that it's not in any way the coach's fault when a guy drops a pass, because Eric says, so Hill didn't execute today. Should he have been replaced? Well, let's see. We're talking about a difference in in-game coaching and possibly a difference in development and practice and certainly recruiting. Yes, I made the comment earlier that at halftime, if I was in the position of Kirk Ferentz, I'm not there, but I may have been looking at making a change at halftime and seeing what Joe Labus could give you. But at the same time, I would say the same thing about the receivers. If you have good enough guys behind guys like Deontay Vines, like if they had another Deontay Vines or a similar player behind him, yeah, if you drop the ball, you might get benched because you're not playing well. But ultimately, it still falls back on the coaches. I don't know why this is such a hard concept for people to grasp.
Yeah.
That players.
Answer the question, should Hill be replaced? The obvious question is, what kind of confidence level do you have that Labus is going to play better? Obviously, their confidence level is not that high.
Right. Exactly. And Berger says, the ball goes where it goes, Coach P. Everyone knows that. I think he's being sarcastic here because he's one of our loyal listeners, Don. But he says the ball goes where it goes.
I'm not. What do you mean by that? What does he mean? The ball goes where it goes.
It goes where it goes.
I don't get it.
Knows that, Don. Everybody knows this. By the way, Jim in the chat, this show is so negative. I love when people don't like people who are honest. Like a show like this that we're just honest. We tell it like it is. We evaluate it based on what we see, and you call that negativity. If you don't like it, go listen to some. And by the way, there's plenty of podcasts. If you want to go listen to a Hawkeye Homer podcast, there's plenty of them out there that will, shove rosy colored glasses at your face every show. So that's not us.
Jim, for the record, we're all about honest assessment. That's what we're all about.
Absolutely. Let's go back to our call-in line. The B is on the line. The B, welcome.
Hello, fellas. I'm back to tell you, I told you, if we win this game and win Wisconsin, we can go 10-2. And I'm going to still say that. We're going to beat Wisconsin next week. No doubt. Book it. Okay. I know I just blew your brains on that. I know. But before
why don't we go 11-1 then?
No, it's gonna be the 10-2. I'm gonna go originally to that, but I think we're gonna beat Wisconsin.
So who are we losing to?
Well,
Who are we losing to?
it's not going to be Wisconsin. We're going to
Okay, so who are we losing to?
We're probably going to lose to the team that you probably expect us to beat. So whatever we've got on the list, do we have Rutgers on the list?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Strong possibility. I will give you that. There will be a slip up here, no doubt about it. But from what I saw today, and Jim, the comment that Jim had that you guys just talked about, let me reframe that a little bit, just so you guys understand. I don't think you guys are negative at all. I don't think this is a negative. I think it's a true assessment. But I think what needs to be done is post Cade now, we have to have different glasses on that maybe we're having a different discussion that we would have had with Cade. So again, last week I told you guys, it's like lipstick on a pig. I know the completion rate wasn't great today, but you know what? We won. And if Cade would have been in that game, we probably wouldn't have won. Well, so I look at this with a whole different view of, we got a guy that just started his first game. Absolutely. Iowa traditionally will get better as the season goes on. Will we have a slip up? Probably, to a team we probably shouldn't lose to. It's book it. It happens every year. But I'm looking at this from not the judgment of, oh man, this quarterback, these drops, this, that, the receiver's got to get in. Eric All, first rounder today. Okay, great connection with him. Loved it. The kid is our wide receiver. We have to come to terms with Iowa and the receiving. The tight ends are Kirk's idea of receivers. This is what they favor. This is what they do. If we can get Eric really working and get our tight ends in, I can live without. I get it. I want Caleb Brown. By the way, he's gone probably, right? So it looks like Kirk said personal reasons he's out. So I'm assuming it's over for him. We don't know that.
We
don't know, but
we can speculate if we want. That means he's entering the transfer portal. We don't know that.
Obviously, there's some issues there. So, but again, I looked at the game. Yeah, it's not pretty, but you know what? We can beat Wisconsin next week. We can do it, man. It's all set up that way. We got the kid coming from Wisconsin to go back to Wisconsin. This is like a movie, man. This is ready to go. This is going to be it. We're going to win that game, and we're going to be all stoked about it. And then the following week or 2 weeks later, we're going to lose to the team we shouldn't lose to. That's how it goes. It's serendipity. This is the way football goes every year for Iowa. So I'm not down on this at all. And I like your guys' assessment, but I just think we have to use different glasses. So maybe when Jim asked that question of, you guys are negative, I don't think you're negative. I just think we're using a different standard of judging how the team played with what we expect them to play if we would have had someone like Cade in there. I look at this guy as, he's a big man, but he's very young when it comes to this game. And there's going to be lots of these overthrows, and there's going to be a lot of these missed opportunities. But just like you said in your midweek show, Corey, that rope that he threw to Caleb Brown last week that he dropped, that was on a dime. Not a lot of guys can throw that ball. So when he's on, he's on. And when he's off, he's off. But I just know I'd rather take the chances with a guy who's at least mobile, and we got a chance to win. So
real quick, let me just ask you. He's not mobile. Okay.
Well, more mobile than Cade. We have to put things in perspective of what we had.
Like he's mobile. He's not mobile. He's mobile relative. You're right. He's mobile relative to a guy who's got a quad injury, who was not real mobile before that anyways.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I have a different set of glasses on now with this. That's what I mean.
I got it. I mean, I guess when I hear that comment that someone so-and-so is mobile, I'm comparing it to the rest of the sport, college football.
Not me. I compare it to Iowa because my bar is so low that I look at it at a different, I don't compare it to other teams. Iowa is so unique. I responded to someone today how Kirk responded to the press conference with the Caleb Brown question. It's amazing to see Kirk. His answers are just like Bill Belichick. It's very little. It's just enough to give you enough information, and there it is. And that's the way Iowa plays every single year. This is the way they're close to the vest. They try to keep everything in house. They really like to control what they do. It's not pretty. It ain't fun, and it's painful. And I get it. I'm there with you guys. But I think we're going to win next week. I think we can go 10-2. I'm going to give Deacon the benefit of the doubt on this. He's young. He's a kid. I praise this kid. He seems like a really cool kid. And, from what his comments were last week about stepping in the huddle, hey guys, I need your help. This guy, the team is going to rally around him. And as you notice, what happened this week, like happened last week, we started playing complementary football. All of a sudden we're getting sacks. All of a sudden Logan Lee gets better. Dude, that guy's been horrible for 4 games and he just starts now popping out of his shell. What's going on? The only guy that I see on defense, though, that I really have an issue with, Wampa. Something's off with him. I don't like him at that position. I don't know. What is he at now? Free safety or strong safety? But
Free.
He's at free. So what was Cooper? Was Cooper at strong last year and then moved to corner? Or was he?
No, he was corner.
He was corner last year as well?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not. Yeah. Wampa, that touchdown in the end zone, horrible tackling style. Doesn't seem like he wanted to put his head in there at all. Also, that play to the side, I don't know. He was trying to run after the player. It seemed like he's kind of gimpy as well. Something's just off with him. I don't know what that is, but I haven't been really like super blown away with what I expected from him because he was such a high rated player. And I don't know if that's just a position thing or they just got to get used to it. But again, complimentary football happened today. Even the offense wasn't great, but we still had the defense doing some stuff. It looked good. Caleb had a big hole to go through. It was cool. And it wasn't, I'm going to take what they give us, but book it next week. Okay. We beat Wisconsin, period.
Okay. Thank you for the call, sir.
All right, guys.
Appreciate it.
My opinion, Corey, that young man is not giving Cade enough credit for how he plays football.
Why?
Just simply to suggest if Cade would have played today, we would have lost. That's what I understood that he said. I don't believe that. I think if Cade was our quarterback today and reasonably healthy, we'd have won the game all over again.
I didn't hear that specifically from our caller, but I will say this. We have not seen Cade. Like there were people a week ago, Don. This is how reactionary fans are. There were people a week ago that said, well, I thought Deacon Hill was better than Cade McNamara all along. I get so tired of that. Just I don't even know what you call it. Delusion. It's just total delusion. You're just not thinking straight. Right. Like it's to make a comment like that. And that's not what our caller just did, but like, seriously, you really believe that? A healthy Cade is by far the best option. And I think Kirk Ferentz would say that 100%. Now, in defense of our caller, I have not once criticized Deacon Hill today. I did say that his numbers were bad. He did not play well. But I have spent very little time talking about his performance because it was his first career start. Now, do I have a lot of confidence going into Wisconsin next week? No. Because even when Iowa has a seasoned quarterback, a la Nate Stanley, or, C.J. Beathard, they won in 15. The offense struggled. Obviously, Petrus struggled in 21 up there. They don't typically play well in Madison. Now, it's a different regime with Luke Fickell at the helm. I get it.
Right.
But, we're not going to stop being honest. If people don't like it, it is what it is. All right. We do need to, let's see. Want to put all these rumors to bed. Jennifer Locke, what Caleb Brown is leaving. We don't know that. Okay. That's just speculation. He's not with the team right now. Kirk explained it due to personal reasons. Jeremy, can we play Cooper on both sides of the ball? Well, I'm not, I'm certainly not averse to it, Don. I've been saying that for over a year, having a few plays in the playbook, having a package ready for him, but I don't think that's probably going to happen.
Well, I would say, realizing we're averaging 21.8 points per game, we probably should think about letting Cooper try to boost that number a little bit.
Well, it was brought up to Kirk Ferentz this week, and he brought up what you said, workload. So I don't think that's going to happen, and I understand, to an extent, the perspective on that. I do want to give a quick shout-out to our sponsors, Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Give him a call and let him give you a great rate on auto, home, renters, business, life insurance. They've got 3 fully licensed team members to help you navigate through the complex world that is insurance, and this team has been in business since 1999. So lining up nicely with the Kirk Ferentz era, and rates have never been this low with auto insurance. They're saving people tons of money. Visit Brad online at www.bradvanmeter.com or visit his office in person, 4229 Fleur Drive in Des Moines. Again, that's 4229 Fleur Drive in Des Moines. And Iowa Smokehouse. Yes, tasting is believing, whether you're talking about their awesome, tasty beef jerky, their flavorful meat sticks, or their delicious steak bites. They've got everything you need for game day. And boy, you can pair these products with your favorite bourbon or perhaps your favorite beer. You'll never need to look anywhere else for game day. Visit iowasmokehouse.com and use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. Again, that's the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. We mentioned this earlier, but our RTI Threads player of the game, Logan Lee, and our caller a minute ago brought him up, Don. 10 tackles, 2.5 for loss, 2 sacks. He is a guy who's been with this program a long time. Kirk always jokes about Logan. He's joked about him in his last 2 media days preseason about how old he is. He's married. He's got kids. I think there's some exaggeration there. He is married. But this line, I mean, it hasn't produced the sacks that maybe some people anticipated. But it has been solid as it relates to run stopping. And I certainly think the leadership of this unit is strong. And I remember back during media day asking some of the other players on this defense and players in the back end, hey, what's the strength of the defense? And they all said the defensive line. So I don't think we need to push the panic button on the low sack numbers. As we talked about earlier, 6 sacks today. Don, is it fair to say you brought up the extra pressure Phil brought late? I made the comment earlier this evening, that when you look at the coverage sacks and the long periods of time that Hudson Card was able to, I guess the time he was able to buy back there in the pocket due to great coverage, is it fair to say that maybe Phil looks at that on tape and says, maybe we should start bringing an extra rusher or 2?
Absolutely. I thought that was a good, sound decision. And we realized, of course, there's a chance they'll pop a big play on us, but we were at least going to go down with our guns blazing. And it paid off. Got us off the field in a short amount of time. I believe that first down sack was Logan Lee, as I recall, wasn't it, on that last series?
I think you're correct. I think that was one of his 2. Yeah. And like I said, you look at how well apparently the DBs were playing. And our previous caller brought up Xavier Wampa. I was not real impressed with his effort on the touchdown at the end of the first half. I was also not real impressed with the effort of Jamari Harris at the end of the first half. And that was brought up in our chat, Don. I don't know if you have any comments to make or if you even saw that, but Scott wants to know what was going on with Jamari Harris on that play.
Well, I will say this. 1 week ago, I made the comment. I thought that Wampa played the best game of his career.
I agree.
And he had any number of tackles in open key tackles. So he was pretty effective. They made so much, I think, but it's kind of hard to know until you go back at the video. Hard to know it in time, but I will admit that he didn't stick out with any number of nice open field tackles. I didn't see that. And so maybe he was a little bit off with the way the game played out.
Did it seem like Hudson Card was really attacking Cooper DeJean's side of the field until he got that pick? And then it seemed like they kind of said, let's stay away from him.
Well, I was a little mystified as to why he was going to Cooper's side as much as he did, because I saw a couple of opportunities early with deep throws, and I'm thinking, well, thank God they're not throwing very accurately deep downfield, because we were beating a time or 2. And the bottom line, give your guy a chance to catch it. Don't overthrow him. Even if it's a little bit underthrown, let's face it, one guy's a receiver. He's very adept at judging a ball in flight, and the DBs are so often not quite as talented. So you've always had that expression, 50-50 ball goes to the offense, right? And so give him a chance to catch it. I thought in that regard, Card's deep throws were not effective. His percentage was no good, and it wasn't because he didn't have some people open deep downfield. There were times when they were open.
John, appreciate the super chat. This is Xavier's 7th game as a college athlete. There will be inexperienced and missed tackles. Let's see, 7th. That's not true. It's not his 7th game as a college athlete, Don.
He played last fall, didn't he?
He played last fall. He burned the red shirt. Now, he didn't play a lot on defense. I'll give him that. I'll give John that. But he did play, let's see.
The interception in the bowl game, is that right?
Yeah, he's counting that. He's counting the bowl game plus the 6 games this year. But he did play. He burned the red shirt earlier in the year, but albeit not on defense. So, yeah, he's still young. But the expectations are obviously higher when you have a 5-star kid like like Xavier want. But let's go to our final caller of the night. And it's someone who called in earlier, but wants to talk to you, Don. Can you guess who it is? Mr.
Not
Ryan.
my wife, is it?
No, that's not your wife. Ryan, welcome.
Ryan,
Hey, thank you guys.
tell me something good.
Well, what do we have to talk about that's good? Well, we won today, so that's good. Hey, Coach. When you were offensive coordinator, do you remember anyone really calling for your head? Because I go back to 82, Chuck Long's first year, Owen Gill, Jonathan Hayes. And I know you were an offensive coordinator then. You were in the 90s.
Right.
And, did you have any issues like this? And one question I have is, I think Brian, as I said earlier tonight, called a fairly good game tonight. The wide receivers is a major disconnect, but I was impressed by the fact that he thrown down the field. And that was a wonderful, wonderful thing for me to see, even though there were a lot of incompletions. And if you can comment on that, and then I have a couple other questions regarding, after you comment on that, regarding, the West Coast coming to the Big Ten.
Yeah. Well, you heard me say before, Ryan, one of the things I like about this year compared to last year is we're making an effort, a greater effort to make big plays. And part of that effort ties into throwing the ball down the field. I'll admit our percentages have not been great, but at least we're making attempts. And we've had worse. We had on Eric all involved. And thankfully, it gave us a chance to make some explosive plays. And we were one of the worst teams in the Big Ten this year in making explosive plays on offense. So I'm glad to see Brian do that. It's been a concerted effort to make more chunk plays. And we're not having great success doing it, but at least we're trying. That's the first step, is to make a real attempt. And so we simply have to find ways to be more efficient and being able to hit on some of those same points.
Do you think part of the problem, though, is that we don't have a legit quarterback coach? We've dug to death the fact that Kirk likes to double up on bad, I guess I'll say, when he is criticized. So people didn't like Ken O'Keefe as quarterback coach. We were okay. And then Ken O'Keefe retires, and then all of a sudden we're going to double down on Brian when we have a pretty maligned offensive scheme as it is. And then, what scares the daylights out of me is I have no doubt we win 9 or 10 games this year. But, look at Illinois. Brett Bielema, he's got a full plate. I mean, when doesn't Brett Bielema have a full plate, I guess? But, he's got a full plate of problems. Nope. And we, Nebraska.
Probably a bad choice of words there, Ryan, but anyway.
No, I think Ryan's trying to be funny, Ryan.
No. Illinois got beat by 13 points by Nebraska, who shouldn't be, my point being, Illinois, Nebraska, Purdue today, even though we had some problems with Purdue, Northwestern, these are teams that we should be able to beat fairly consistently, right? But what are we going to do without a good quarterback coach, without a good scheme when Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA join the mix? And that scares me because the landscape will change.
Correct.
Correct.
And, what worries me about Kirk, and Kirk's done a wonderful job over the years, and I mean he's really a master of winning ugly, if you will. And I'm all about winning too. But the thing is I can see your expected 8, 9, 10 wins becoming 5, 6, or 7 pretty quick if we don't change. And with a quarterback coach, and we have an AD who's an interim. She could fire Brian, I guess, and Kirk may or may not leave. But the fact of the matter is, where do we pivot? What would happen? We can get through this year, right? On 8, 9 wins, 9, 10 wins, easily, I think. But the landscape changes. Where do we go from here? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. By the way, Ryan, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
The woodchuck would chuck long, would throw for the second or third most Big Ten yards, I think, because he was a great woodchuck.
All right, Don.
Speaking of Chuck, has there ever been a more appropriate name for a quarterback than Chuck Long?
Chuck Hartley.
But,
you're right. Chuck Long. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, deep throw. Chuck it long.
He doesn't. He wasn't known for his deep ball, though, right, Don?
No. He's an example again of not a great arm, but excellent accuracy and great anticipation on throws. You've heard me talk about that before.
Kyle Hawks, appreciate the super chat. Time of possession was one-sided again today. What does that do to the defense over a season? Besides wear them down, Don.
It takes a little bit of a toll. Yeah, you're out there for more snaps, and not just a few more, but significantly more snaps. Now, part of that burden goes to the defense, of course. The offense can't help them get off the field. So the defense has to find ways to kill drives, and Phil's working on that. That's the reason his strategy changed on that last possession. He decided, no, we're going to force the issue. We're going to come after you. And it worked.
We're going to go quick fire on these final few questions, Don. Kyle says, how long before you run a QB draw, jet sweep out of the 5-wide set? Anything to keep the run threat in that formation?
Well, let me make one comment about empty. I'm a little concerned about empty. Right now, people, whatever they've called in the huddle, that's what they've played. But I know what I would think seriously about doing. If you had an immobile quarterback and you wanted to go empty, that's fine. You've only got 5 linemen up front. I'd simply rush 6. And if you're going to rush 6, the ball's got to come out right now. All the defenders know the ball's got to come out right now. And if it doesn't come out right now, then obviously you got a free rusher hitting the quarterback. And we haven't seen that yet. So that's one reason you should think long and hard about going empty. Because if they're going to do that to you, you better have an audible plan to deal with it. And it better involve a really quick throw.
Matt says, I'll ask again, am I a bad fan if I'm very doubtful Iowa wins in Madison next week? Well, if you're a bad fan, I'm very bad fan because, Matt, I don't have a whole lot of confidence about that game right now. I'll just be frank.
One thing has crossed my mind, Corey. You're aware probably the last 2 weeks we've won the toss and we've chosen to take the ball to start the game. It makes sense in some ways. Well, first off, we've already established we're not a very good team playing from behind, and we were playing at home in both games. So a chance to get out in front with a friendly crowd, that all sounds good. But my question going forward is what's going to happen next week if we win the toss? I'm a little nervous if we do decide to take the ball because of crowd noise and because of our difficulty of moving it. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if next week we win the toss, Kirk chooses to defer. I would expect that's what he would do.
Is there an aspect to Iowa choosing to take the ball more often than not because they want to be able to give Torrey Taylor a chance to pin the defense back? I think it's ridiculous that we're making decisions like that based on assuming we're having to punt. But Is there an aspect to that they'd rather have Tory
Well,
Taylor?
I believe our opening series today, did we make a first down or not? I know we didn't make more than one.
I don't
I'm
think
not
so.
sure we made one.
Yeah.
So we were lucky, the kick went out of bounds, so we started on the 35. But it's a real burden for Corey to flip the field if he's got a punt with the ball snapped on the 35. That's a long way to that other goal line. So I don't know what their first field position was. I could check. I just had the play-by-play in front of me a few minutes ago. But let's imagine, and he was punting into a little bit of wind, you might recall, but he still hit a good punt. It was okay. They didn't. Corey was punting into the wind today. He's just such an exceptional punter. It's not hard to imagine that it's still going to be a good punt. Let me check right quick. Start the game. We punted from the minus 34. We actually lost a yard, right? So fourth down, we punted from the 34. Well, come to think of it, it was a little bit of a returner. You might recall, I believe he might have even shot it over Sheffield's head, but he went back and got it. He also returned it 48 yards across midfield. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
That was the first punt of the game. So we did not have a good field position after Torrey's first punt.
Right.
It's one of the few punts that made against us.
And obviously, we don't know what the wind
But I'll
is
be
going to be.
the next week. I'm going to stay, Corey. Next week, if we win the toss, I'll be willing to bet you we'll defer.
Well, we'll see what the wind is
Primarily
like.
because we're playing on the road and we have a hard time driving the ball with their offense. And we don't want to start off with bad field position.
Kerry, appreciate the comment. Thanks for another great show, coaching Corey. Love hearing your take on the game. Thank you, Kerry. Appreciate that. And Kyle, same thing. Thank you for being here, Kyle, being a part of the show. Jennifer wants to know what time the game is or what channel the game is on. No, what time the game is. I'm sorry, 3 p.m. Central Time on Fox, Iowa, Wisconsin. And Don, you're going to be working a Missouri Valley game next week, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. I mean, so you might have a Saturday night show, but I won't be able to be part of it.
Right.
We will get back Saturday night. It's an early kick. I think it's a noon kick. But we'll be coming back from Kansas City. And I'll be able to go Sunday night. If you want to do a show on Sunday night, I'll be ready.
We'll plan on a Sunday evening show next week. Leroy Watermelon, can coaches calm the QB's nerves?
Absolutely. In part by calling plays that give you a good chance for completions.
Exotic waste downs. Iowa threw a touchdown on 3rd and 2. That was not a waste down. Let's make that clear. That was not a waste down. Sam says, love the show as always, gentlemen. Thank you to both of you. Thank you, Sam. Brody, thank you for the super chat, Brody. Another great show. Thank you, gentlemen. You two are 90% of the content I intake on a weekly basis. Appreciate you both. Well, we appreciate you, Brody. I appreciate you. So thank you for the super chat and for being here. And John says, Coach, how do you feel about the defense that Purdue runs?
Well, they look vulnerable to big plays. You know, we hit them for big plays, run and pass. So, you know, the one thing that I remember Coach Brazier doing so well, and I think Phil Parker does too, the players understand the entire concept of the defense. So if your job is to maintain outside leverage on the ball, that's what you do, because you know that somebody else has inside leverage, and now you can just sandwich the ball carrier with 2 tacklers, not 1. So, you know, Purdue's vulnerable to big plays. That's all I can say. We hurt them with big plays today. Frankly, without those big plays, we wouldn't have won the game. Explosive plays made a difference. Corey, I've lost you.
Okay, now we got that back. Okay, so a couple notes from me real quick, Don. So the 67-yard run for Caleb Johnson, that actually followed a kind of maybe you can explain what the play was. It was kind of a double play action fake on the one completion to someone other than Eric All. It was a completion to Caleb Johnson to start the game. Do you remember that play? And can you break that
I
down.
believe didn't we have, it was a play action, it was a fly sweep action.
Yes.
And then he went out the other side of the formation. Smart play. Smart play because it involved misdirection and a high percentage throw.
Great call by Brian. Great call.
That's correct. It was on that initial call sheet, right? It happened early.
I know. So
It's okay to run it, for that matter. Maybe flip it over the next time, run it to the left. But don't forget about it because it was good one time. It would probably be good again.
Lemansky, thank you for the super chat. Says, Corey, you owe Coach some soup. Throw in a Diet Coke. Thank you, Lemansky. Do that next time we see Don. Definitely. Long shot, Hawk. Didn't Cooper just follow their top receiver today? An adjustment from Phil. Did he do that, Don, or was that?
I'm not sure. I think that's entirely possible. Number 4 was their top receiver, but I don't know. I'm not sure. It's a little easier to follow it on TV than it is to follow it at the game site.
Yeah.
I did notice. I know for sure a lot of snaps Cooper was on. He was playing what we would call right corner. Now, if you're looking at the offense, then your right would be where Cooper was lined up, right?
Right.
And I don't know if he was there all day or not. Maybe he did flip. That's not a bad way to play. It would have saved us last year against Nebraska. Remember that? They didn't burn Cooper. Cooper got injured. They didn't burn. Who was our other corner a year ago?
TJ. Well, it was TJ Hill came in for Cooper. It was Riley Moss.
Yeah, Riley. They didn't go after Riley. They went after the inexperienced corners on the other side. So one solution, of course, is tell Riley Moss to stay with that leading Nebraska receiver. Maybe we did that. I don't doubt that's true. Sitting at home, maybe it's a little. Maybe even the announcers commented on it. I don't know, but that is a good way to play. It gives you a little more flexibility if corners are okay playing both left and right, because you can match them up with specific receivers.
A couple final numbers to take to the bed this evening. Caleb Johnson, 17 carries, 138 yards. 134 yards for Caleb on the day. LaShawn Williams, 13 carries for 74 yards. Seth Anderson had the 1 carry for 4 yards. Deacon Hill, negative 25 yards. So factored into the team totals, and they ended up with 181 net rushing yards. Deacon Hill was 6 of 21 completion, and then one interception, 1 touchdown, had 110 passing yards on the day with a long of 33, took 1 sack. Eric All, 11 targets, 5 catches off those 11 targets, 97 yards, and a touchdown, long of 33. Caleb Johnson had the only other reception by an Iowa player, 1 catch for 13 yards in that early fly sweep play action play. Torrey Taylor, 6 punts for 284 yards. Cooper DeJean had 3 punt returns for 45 yards, along at 25. Drew Stevens, 2 of 4. 1 was blocked. 1 field goal was blocked for Drew. The other one came from 44. He's got to clean some of those tweener kicks up. Most
I have a question for you, Corey, on the block. Was it a low kick or was it simply a good field goal rush?
Hard for me to say, but I can tell you that the NBC, the Peacock commentators kept talking about how low of a kick it was. But okay. I am not an authority on that. You'll have to look back at that. But it looked like a low kick. So
yeah.
Looking at team totals, 21 first downs for Purdue to Iowa's 13. Iowa did outrush the Boilermakers 181-96. Purdue was better through the air, 247 passing yards to Iowa's 110, but Purdue was playing, of course, from behind. Iowa still failed to reach 300 yards total offense, 291 for the day for the Hawkeyes, and of course the 20 points total, which brings the average on the season 21.8 yards for the season. Iowa was 3 of 13 on third down, and Purdue 9 of 19. So Iowa losing that battle, but winning the game in spite of those numbers. And red zone scores versus chances. I know you look at red zone efficiency a little bit differently. Iowa was 2 of 2 in the red zone. But again, I don't agree with how the NCAA looks at those stats either, because that doesn't account for missed opportunities to reach the end zone.
2 for 2, and they were both field goals, right?
Right. Jay Higgins had, he's been a workhorse. 12. How about Jay Higgins? He could have been our player of the game. 12 tackles, 12 tackles plus, I should say, plus an interception, his first of the year. Logan Lee had the 10 tackles. He's our RTI Threads player of the game. as I've talked about here. And he had, again, 10 total tackles, 2 sacks for 17 yards, 2.5 tackles for loss. Quinn Schulte had 8 tackles. Nick Jackson was 7. Joe Evans was 6. Xavier Wampa was 6. Jamari Harris was 6. Wyatt Black was 6. Go down the list. Very productive, obviously, for Iowa's defensive linemen and linebackers, as always. And again, as a reminder, if you haven't shopped RTI Threads, check out their awesome merchandise, cd3lacesup.com, and that's where this shirt came from, this sweatshirt. Get ready for wintertime. Get ready for the cold weather. It is here, folks. Get your official Cooper DeJean merchandise at cd3lacesup.com. And, of course, they have other Hawkeye NIL deals with Zach Lutmer, Carson Shire, Aiden Hall, RTIthreads.com for all their great merchandise, and they've got more partnerships coming, so we appreciate RTI Threads being a part of this show. And, boy, Harpo says Minnesota's down 42 to Michigan. Just this division is just can I say it's a disgrace? I think the division's a disgrace, Don. I really do think it's a disgrace.
Well, I do recall when you look at crossover games, East has beaten the West, I think, every year since we've started East and West.
This is an all-time bad, isn't it?
Yeah. And in some cases, pretty convincingly beat the West in those matchup games.
Adam, thank you for the super chat. Adam, appreciate that. I love your show. Thanks, fellas. Keep up the excellent work. Appreciate that, Adam. And again, Iowa defeating Purdue on this day, 20-14. I will just real quickly give everybody a couple of scores so that you know what games to turn on as we log off here this evening. Georgia just beating down on Kentucky. I feel bad for Mark Stoops. They can never seem to live up to the hype train. And I didn't think they were going to cover. They're not even sniffing covering the number. 51-13 late in the fourth over on ESPN. And how about Michigan? 51-10 right now on NBC, and Michigan's got the ball, according to what I'm looking at. Ole Miss leading Arkansas 24-10 in the fourth quarter. Louisville, how about this? The Cardinal leading Notre Dame 24-13 in the fourth quarter. And Notre
Jeff
Dame
Brown working to be 6-0.
Absolutely. How about Georgia Tech leading number 17 Miami on the road 14-10? And how about this? Fresno State, a team that beat Purdue, ranked in the top 25. They're trailing by 2 touchdowns at Wyoming late in the third quarter. Texas Tech destroying Baylor 24-3. How about Iowa State at home right here in Ames? Into the third quarter, it's 24-7 over the defending national runners-up, the TCU Horned Frogs. Utah State, a team that beat Iowa, that played Iowa, leading Colorado State 31-7. Number 15, Oregon State leading California early 7-0. San Jose State, Boise State, third quarter, it's a 13-point lead for the Spartans. And I think that's about all she wrote for this window. There's a few games, still a couple of games here late, right? And we've got Arizona and USC. Should be an entertaining game on ESPN later. I don't know if Jaden Delora is playing in that game, but they've been kind of a surprise in the Pac-12. But again, Iowa with the 20-14 win over Purdue. They moved to 5-1 on the season. Don, can you give me? I know we're not going to be doing a live show Saturday. I will be here live. We'll do a post-game show Sunday next week. Give us some thoughts on Wisconsin, what you've seen of them. How do they look different from past Badger squads, and how does Iowa go up to a really difficult place to play and win on national TV next week?
Well, I thought against Purdue, I thought they looked a little bit vulnerable. Purdue hit a lot of big plays on them, moved the ball up and down the field. Difference in that game, I think, Wisconsin was probably at least +2 on turnovers, I believe. And they were playing on the road. So some teams have a little different personality at home. And that was certainly a quality win today. I thought Rutgers might pull it off. Rutgers is a dangerous team. We'll certainly see them that way as they get ready to play in Kinnick, too. It'll be a challenge to make that still another win for us. It won't come easy, I think. The thing that concerns me, preseason, they were talking about the Wisconsin offensive line being one of their better ones. That's a concern. And then I knew at the time they had a really good 1-2 punch at running back. Since then, the backup is injured, but it sounds like this third running back is more than capable also.
And Tanner Mordecai is mobile, as is Hudson Card. Iowa did a nice job containing Hudson. I think, based on what I've seen, Mordecai is a little bit more of a willing runner. How does Iowa contain him?
That's got to be a concern. One thing it probably does, you didn't see a lot of two-man today in passing situations because I'm sure we were worried about the quarterback. you'll probably see again next week. In those long yardage situations, you probably won't see two-man, because I think the concern would be there's nobody manned up on the quarterback. So in that regard, more cover two probably, or maybe I think we had some combo coverage today. Maybe if Wisconsin has a clear choice in critical downs, maybe you'll see a couple of DBs comboing on one receiver. You heard me suggesting that some people might try to do that to Eric All going forward, because obviously he's a guy that we feel comfortable throwing the ball to.
Wisconsin, and Don kind of alluded to it, Wisconsin was +1 today on turnovers against Rutgers. Iowa was +1 today against Purdue. It always seems like this game. I go back to 2021. I go back to 2015. I go back to 2018. Go back to 2019. Turnovers are always big in this series, and they're big in every Iowa game. But, man, I think back to 15, the Joel Stave fumble along the goal line. That play doesn't happen. Iowa probably loses. It doesn't get a trip. Well, they don't have a as clear of a shot at the college football playoff. Of course, they fell just short with that loss to Michigan State, but almost got in despite the loss. That probably doesn't happen if that Stave fumble doesn't happen. 2018, I think back, that was the game. Well, 2017 was the game where Iowa had 2 pick sixes by Josh Jackson a week after the Ohio State win. 2018 was the Tyrone Tracy, what was it, like an 85-yard catch and run that sent that game, I believe, to overtime, or maybe it was 2 points from going to overtime. And there was a strip sack, I know, by A.J. Epinesa in that game on the Wisconsin quarterback. 2019, you had a couple of weird special teams gaffes with Kyle Groneweg returning punts, and that was the one where the punt went off of Sean Byers' foot or leg, and there was another punt return by Groneweg where the ball just popped out. So, like, every year in this series, something like that happens. And then, of course, 2021, there were some really strange goings-on in that game. I won't name names, but you probably remember there was at least one tailback in that game who had issues at Iowa with fumbling the football, who got a little loose with the football. I think Iowa had a muffed punt in that game as well, perhaps by I'm trying to think of who that would have been. Max Cooper, perhaps? Sorry, Max, if you didn't do that. I apologize to Max Cooper in advance. But, I mean, you just have to look at turnovers, Don, right? Turnovers and penalties. And Wisconsin played clean football today, 2 penalties for 25 yards. Iowa played clean football today as well, 2 penalties for 20 yards. So penalties and turnovers, I got to go back to those 2 categories, Don.
Yeah, I was going to mention that we clearly won on penalties. We had a significant margin on penalties and penalty yardage today. I don't know this disparity, but it was significant, right? Purdue got flagged a lot. So I know going
for 45 yards.
Yeah. The one thing I'm sure of, the players are going to hear from Kirk that we've got to find a way to play a clean game. There's no way we can make more mistakes than Wisconsin and be guaranteed to win the game. Wisconsin's going to hear the same thing. Both teams have that same mindset. You got to be able to win on turnovers. Don't beat yourself with penalties. Guard against explosive plays. Another thing that I think is key for us, again, we got to get off to a solid start because we don't want to try to play from behind against a Camp Randall crowd that can be difficult to deal with. So let's start fast. Let's at least never be more than 1 score down. Hopefully be 1 or 2 scores ahead throughout. That'll give us our best chance. We do not want to play from behind against these guys. Again, if it's only 1 score, we can deal with that. But hopefully we're never behind by more than 1 because that will make it more difficult.
Iowa, Wisconsin next Saturday on Fox, 3 p.m. Central Time for the kickoff. I'll be with you live for Iowa postgame right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and then we'll have a special part 2 of the show with Coach John Patterson Saturday evening. Coach, appreciate you jumping on.
Sunday evening.
What did I say? Saturday evening? Sunday evening. We'll be back 2 days in a row. It's always fun to make it a long weekend. So, Coach Patterson, appreciate you being here. If you left any of that soup, be sure to get some soup. And did Lisa make cookies today?
She did not, but that loaded potato soup is to die for. It was good.
Folks, remember to support our sponsors, CD3LacesUp.com, the Cooper DeJean apparel. Get your merchandise now before he goes off in the NFL, because that's coming, folks. Cooper DeJean, a special athlete at Iowa. Of course, support Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Get a quote from him today. Buy your meat, all your snacks at iowasmokehouse.com. And again, just appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate all of our donors, our members, our commenters, our callers, everybody. For Coach John Patterson, I'm Corey Braddock. We'll talk to everybody next week, Saturday and Sunday. And, of course, I'll be here with you throughout the week leading up to Iowa and Wisconsin. Have a great night.